When the earthquake came, Mom didn't hesitate to run out while holding my younger brother, leaving me, a young child, behind. Afterwards, I cried loudly. Mom said, "It was just a small earthquake, you're just being overly sensitive. Even though I didn't take you with me when I escaped, you're still fine, aren't you?" She clearly knew that if it weren't for the two big golden retrievers that protected me, I might have lost my life. I didn't die. But I lost the two big golden retrievers in my legs. Later, accompanied by the surviving little golden retriever, I gradually got out of the shadows. Grandma thought that having a dog would affect my younger brother's studies, so she secretly sold it. I hysterically questioned why she sold my dog. Mom slapped me hard and said, "It was just a dog. Is it worth yelling at your grandma?" They didn't know that I had been diagnosed with severe depression. And the little golden retriever was my only salvation. That night, I forced myself to climb onto the balcony and jumped off. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the day the earthquake came. 1. The aroma of the food wafted into my nose. Along with it was Mom's gentle voice. "Dean, Mom has made your favorite sweet and sour pork. You should eat an extra bowl later." Then came my younger brother's impatient voice. "Got it, got it." It's so annoying." I looked in the direction of the voice. Mom, wearing an apron, was busy in the kitchen, and my younger brother was sitting on the sofa watching TV. Mom didn't have white hair, and my younger brother was still 8 years old. The two big golden retrievers were lying at my feet, sound asleep, and I hadn't lost my legs because of that earthquake. Everything proved to me that I had been reborn. I was reborn on the day the earthquake came, if I remembered correctly. When Mom served the stir-fried sweet and sour pork, the ground began to shake. Realizing this, without saying a word, I grabbed the collars of the two golden retrievers, one in each hand, and dragged them towards the yard. As for my younger brother, I told him that there was a nest of swallows under the eaves on the second floor. Sure enough, my younger brother, who had been watching the cartoon, immediately became excited and opened the door to rush to the second floor. Finally, the moment I walked into the yard and my younger brother ran up to the second floor, the ground began to shake, too, just like in my previous life. The moment the house started to shake, Mom threw away the sweet and sour pork in her hand and rushed to the living room. Seeing that my 75-pound younger brother wasn't downstairs, she started shouting my younger brother's name hysterically and searching the room. When she heard my younger brother's voice coming from upstairs, she rushed out quickly, never mentioning my name throughout the process, however. Almost at the same time she rushed into the yard, the whole building collapsed with a loud crash. The ground was still shaking, and I had reached the safe area. I slumped to the ground, and the two big golden retrievers were snuggling beside me. I hugged them tightly. It was great that they were still alive, and my legs weren't broken either. Unexpectedly, while I was still immersed in the joy of surviving the disaster, Mom suddenly rushed into the ruins and started searching for my younger brother. She didn't stop crying until she found my younger brother with blood on his legs after her nails were turned over. After crying, as if she had thought of something, she pounced on me, grabbing my hair and hitting me. "You dead girl, you saw the earthquake coming and didn't even shout. You only cared about these two beasts and ignored your younger brother. Why wasn't it you who had an accident but your younger brother?" 3. My face stung, and my ears were buzzing. This scene seemed to pull me back to my previous life. At that time, I was pressed under the ruins and watched as Mom protected my younger brother in her arms. The two golden retrievers protected me from left and right, and they were already barely breathing. Afterwards, when I was rescued by the rescue team, I cried and questioned why she only saved my younger brother and ignored me. Mom said that she didn't mean to. When the earthquake came, her first reaction was to run with my younger brother. And she really forgot about me. She even posted a short essay online with the title, "A Small Earthquake Made My 11-Year-Old Daughter Hate Me for a Lifetime." My legs were almost crushed, and I had to face amputation. Because of the righteous comments from netizens, Mom spoke sarcastically to me in various ways. She called me overly sensitive and narrow-minded, and said that I was an ungrateful person. My younger brother also showed off everywhere, saying that Mom loved him the most and that I was a burden. I gradually fell into depression because of their scolding and the death of the two big golden retrievers. Later, when I was in a wheelchair and mourning Jojo and Coco, I saw the little golden retriever they gave birth to in the ruins. Since then, there was a glimmer of light in my life, but who would have known that they would push me into the abyss again? I still remember the gloating look on my younger brother's face when I found out that Grandma sold my golden retriever. He looked at me with a bad smile and said, "You dead cripple, Grandma sold your dog to the dog meat vendor. Too bad I didn't get to taste the dog meat. It must be delicious. You said you have depression. I think you're just pretending. If you were really depressed, you would have died long ago. How could you still be alive?" 4. Perhaps seeing that I didn't reply, Mom flew into a rage again. She slapped me hard again and cried, "I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? Why are you looking at me like that? Am I wrong?" At this time, many people who had survived the disaster gathered around. Thanks to Mom's loud voice, everyone looked at me. I burst into tears and said, "How could I know there would be an earthquake? I'm not a fortune teller. Aren't you glad that I escaped too?" Instead, you hit me and questioned why it wasn't me who had an accident. Aren't I your own child? If I hadn't taken Jojo and Coco out in advance and it was me who had an accident, would you scold my younger brother and wonder why it wasn't him? After my questioning, Mom was stunned on the spot. The others present also started talking all at once. Yeah, Esme's mom, you said that both children are equally dear to you. You should be glad that Esme is okay. Why are you hitting the child? Instead of scolding your daughter, you should go and check on your son. You're lucky, unlike my family, my child's grandfather and father. The person who spoke last started wiping away tears. In the direction where her gaze landed were two relatives who had been dug out by everyone but had already lost their vital signs. Probably reminded by this, Mom realized that her younger brother was still under the ruins. She cursed and rushed over with several others to dig out her younger brother whose legs were still in the ruins. When she saw that her younger brother's lower body was covered in blood, she cried her heart out. Dean, don't scare Mom. Look at your sister. Dean, Mom just said a few words to her, and she came up with a lot of reasons. Dean will definitely be good when he grows up. Unlike your sister, she will definitely be an ungrateful person. I didn't refute. Instead, I sneered in my heart. Mom, since you've already decided that I'm an ungrateful person, if I don't live up to your expectations, won't you be disappointed? But now that it's my younger brother who's paralyzed, I really want to know how you will deal with it. 5. My younger brother managed to save his life. As I expected, his legs were almost crushed, and he had to be amputated from the root of his thighs. Mom wept all day long. Every time she saw me, there was a hint of resentment in her eyes, but when I looked at her, that resentment disappeared in an instant. Instead, she said coldly, Esme, your younger brother is like this now. You should study hard. Mom still has to go to work. After your younger brother is discharged from the hospital, the responsibility of taking care of him will fall on you. With these words, she revealed the truth of why she could tolerate me, but I'm no longer that easy target. So I said, Mom, I'm only in the 5th grade. I'm so stupid. How can I take care of my younger brother? And I still have to go to school. How about this? You resign and take care of my younger brother, or you can ask Grandma to take care of him. Perhaps remembering all the times she had disliked me for being stupid, and thinking that I was indeed unreliable, Mom finally sighed and said, Fine, I'll beg Grandma to come and take care of your younger brother. In fact, in my previous life, Mom didn't consider who would take care of me at all, even when I was in the hospital. She was extremely perfunctory, most of the time. She just brought my younger brother to the hospital for a quick look and then found an excuse to leave. Even when I was in the hospital, I often went hungry. It was the aunt in the next bed who couldn't stand it and shared some of her food with me every time she ate. At that time, Mom was afraid of spending money and took me home after I had been in the hospital for only a week. Grandma made an excuse that the aunt whom my father newly married was about to give birth, and she ignored me. Mom was busy going on blind dates and didn't come home at night after getting to know a new boyfriend. My younger brother ate well with Mom, leaving me at home hungry and full. When I could move around in a wheelchair, Mom started ordering me around. As for my younger brother, who is only a year and a half younger than me, he didn't have to do anything. I was scolded by Mom. I swept the floor, wiped the table, cooked, and stir-fried dishes while sitting in a wheelchair. My younger brother played games and called me a cripple. Every time this happened, I would cry out of sadness and hysteria. Mom smiled and blamed me. Your younger brother is young and doesn't know any better. Can't you just let him be? I couldn't bear it anymore and questioned. My younger brother is younger than me, but I'm disabled. My legs are broken. But how did she reply to me at that time? She suddenly changed her expression and said with disdain in her eyes, Yes, you're disabled. But it wasn't me or your younger brother who made you disabled. You can only blame your bad luck. After that, I learned to keep my mouth shut and stay silent. 6. Because of his disability, unlike me in the previous life, this time my younger brother took the initiative to drop out of school. Grandma, after Mom's pleading, although she complained, she still agreed to take care of my younger brother. Mom was able to continue working, moreover, for the sake of my younger brother. She didn't go on blind dates everywhere or have a new boyfriend. Instead, besides work, she focused all her attention on my younger brother. In fact, Mom and Dad had already divorced, and Dad had reorganized his family half a year ago. Grandma lived a carefree life usually, even though she didn't care about either side. Considering that there was a grandson here, she agreed to Mom's request. She took good care of my younger brother, whether he was disabled or not. They didn't reduce their love for my younger brother at all. Mom even bought a game console for my younger brother to pass the boring days. But even so, my younger brother's temper became very strange and irritable. Facing such a younger brother, I, who was still young, could only stay as far away as possible and focus all my energy on studying. In my previous life, because I became disabled, Mom didn't ask for my opinion and directly handled my withdrawal from school. So far, Not having the opportunity to go to school was the biggest regret in my life. Now that I was reborn, I vowed to study hard on my own, take good care of the two big golden retrievers, and get out of this home. Heaven helps those who persevere. With my persistent efforts, I was admitted to the best middle school in the county as I wished. When Mom learned this news, instead of being happy, she was worried. That night, Mom specially called Grandma and they came to my room. They took turns trying to brainwash me. Mom said, "Esme, you're already a grown girl. Mom knows that you study well and are sensible, so Mom hopes that you can stay in the county to go to high school. In this way, you can come home after school and help Mom take care of your younger brother." Grandma chimed in, "Yeah, Esme, your mom has been working so hard. If it weren't for you, your mom wouldn't have to work so hard to earn that little money. Now that I'm getting older, it's very tiring for me to take care of your younger brother. Your parents are divorced. When you get married in the future, the only one you can count on is your younger brother." I interrupted Grandma's words. "You keep saying that you're working hard, but it's all for Dean, not for me. Also, Dean's legs are disabled. I study well. As long as I study hard, get into a good university, and get a good job after graduation, tell me, who should count on whom?" After these words, Grandma and Mom fell silent at the same time. I guess that they should now know who is more valuable. 7. After that conversation, Mom and Grandma's attitude towards me changed. While they were nicer to me than before, my younger brother was still the first in their hearts. But it didn't matter. The most important thing was that Mom allowed me to go to the Municipal Key High School as I wished. After I started high school, I lived on campus and only went home once a month. I received my living expenses on time, and Mom would call me to show false concern from time to time. She even took good care of the 3 golden retrievers. I accepted all of this, until one time when I went home, I went to the living room to get some water at night and heard the conversation between Mom and my younger brother. The door was slightly ajar, and Mom walked into my younger brother's room with a plate. My younger brother was playing games and hardly looked up. Mom leaned in to please him and said with a smile and a low voice, "Eat quickly, these are the braised chicken legs specially made for you. Your sister doesn't have any." My younger brother pursed his lips and finally showed a smile. "Mom, I'm disabled. You still love me." Mom kissed him on the face and said, "Of course, no matter what you become. You're Mom's most beloved baby. What about my sister? You're so nice to her." Mom said again, "Your sister, silly son. Mom is being nice to her for you. After she graduates and finds a good job, won't the money she earns be used to find you a wife? Mom is secretly saving money. Tell Mom what you want to eat and what you want to play. No matter how hard and tired Mom is, it's all worth it for you." I sneered. My heart felt even more desolate. In my previous life, I was disabled and at home, and everyone despised me, especially my mother. She always regarded me as a burden, and several times she left me at my father's place. But my father had already formed a new family and didn't care about whether I lived or died at all. One memory that's deeply ingrained in my mind was in the winter when I was 16. My mother disliked that I dropped a grain of rice while eating. She suddenly went crazy, slapped me dozens of times, and finally pushed my wheelchair and left me downstairs at my father's house. It was very cold. I was wearing an old and thin down jacket that she didn't want, below my waist. I was only wearing a pair of thin pants. At that time, it was snowing heavily. The snow piled up thick on me. I was shivering. I begged my mother not to abandon me and cried out for my father to let me in and take shelter, but neither of them showed up, and I almost froze to death. In the end, someone in the community saw me and called the police for me. The police contacted my mother and told her that if she did such a thing again, she would be punished for the crime of abandonment and would go to jail. My mother took me back and angrily slapped me a few more times, and then told me her true feelings. "When I divorced your father, I thought that bringing you over would mean you could help out. Who knew you'd be such a burden? You're in this state. What's the point of still living? Why don't you just die?" Sure enough, love is love, and lack of love is lack of love. After hearing all this, I didn't say anything. I just silently remembered it in my heart. I knew that my efforts would pay off one day. 8. Soon, I successfully entered a key university. Because I had a balanced diet and often ran for exercise, I was healthy and strong. Unlike in my previous life when I had muscle atrophy and was thin and small, now I was even half a head taller than my mother. When I was a sophomore, in a good mood, I bought a mina. Whenever I was tired from studying or after finishing my part-time job, I taught it to speak. During the summer vacation, I even took the little mina home, saying it was to relieve my younger brother's boredom. When my younger brother saw the beautiful mina, he happily said, "Even though you're a burden who can't earn money, at least you have some sense of self-awareness and know how to please the only man in the family." I smiled but didn't say anything. Instead, I hung the mina above his head. Perhaps seeing that I was beautiful and graceful, my younger brother's eyes turned gloomy when he looked at me. He pursed his lips and said coldly, "So what if you're good-looking and in university? In the end, you'll still earn money for my wife." Before I could retort, the mina hanging above my head suddenly said, "You cripple, hey, you cripple." The mina was very talkative, and once it started talking, it couldn't stop. Unfortunately, since I bought it, I had only taught it this sentence. I laughed so hard that I bent over. My younger brother's face turned from white to green, and he was instantly broken down. Finally, he roared, Esme, did you do it on purpose? You must have done it on purpose, using this mina to anger me. Mom, Grandma, look at this burden who can't earn money. My younger brother's shouting quickly caught the attention of my mother and Grandma. My mother rushed in first. But when she heard the little mina still shouting cripple, she immediately started scolding me. Esme, what do you mean? Your younger brother is already pitiful with his broken legs. You even bought a dead bird to laugh at him. Grandma even rushed up and wanted to take down the mina I had hung up and throw it out. Unfortunately, at 5 meters tall, even if she jumped, she couldn't reach it. Instead, I pushed Grandma, who wanted to hit me, away fiercely and said coldly, it's just a bird. Why are you so defensive? And it's not wrong. Should I call him long-legged instead of cripple? I'm a student at a key university now. You all have to count on me. Besides, I'm under a lot of study pressure. What else can I do but find some fun? My mother was so angry that she trembled all over. Since she couldn't beat me, she could only scold me. Don't you have any conscience? He's your own younger brother. I laughed loudly. You said it. My conscience was eaten by a dog. So don't count on me from now on. That night, my mother didn't call me for dinner, but when I smelled the fragrance of the food, I went out to eat by myself. My mother threw down her chopsticks and said, I didn't cook for you. I unceremoniously picked a plate of my favorite food and put it in my bowl, making them even angrier. In the following days, I continued to stay at home, with everything served to me. I also took the mina to Dean's room from time to time. No one could do anything to me. 9. That night, I heard my mother and Grandma whispering in the room. Grandma said, let her continue. She's like a grasshopper after autumn. She won't be able to jump for a few more days. When she goes to school, don't give her the living expenses. When she realizes her mistake, she'll beg you to transfer money to her. By the way, sell those dead dogs. They eat more than people every day. I once begged, but it was in my previous life. At that time, even though I was depressed. In order to prevent my little golden retriever from being tortured after my death, I still struggled to live, but they went on a trip during the National Day and left me alone at home. I had no legs and was inconvenient to move. There was only enough food at home to last for 2 days. Even the water was cut off. During that time, I called them, but both my father and mother refused to answer. After the food ran out, I didn't know who to ask for help. When I and the 3 golden retrievers were so hungry that we were weak, my mother posted photos of the 3 of them on a trip in the moments and captioned it, the greatest happiness in my life is having my beloved baby by my side. When I was extremely hungry, I could only take the 3 golden retrievers and climb down the stairs to look for food in the garbage. When I was thirsty, I found plastic bottles and filled them with tap water from the property's public toilet to drink. Despair surrounded me, and I hated every one of them, but I didn't even have tears of hatred. I could only drag my broken body and hold on until they came back, so I was extremely grateful that God gave me a chance to start over. When school started this time, I took the 3 golden retrievers with me. Coco and Jojo were already very old, and I knew they wouldn't be with me for long, but I still did my best to rent a house outside so that they could enjoy their old age. Perhaps seeing that I didn't respond, my mother took the initiative to call me a month after school started. First, she pretended that nothing had happened, and then she probed and asked, Esme, you know it's not easy for Mom to support you in school all these years. Don't forget Mom's efforts for you. You'll graduate soon. Mom is thinking that when you start working and get your salary, you can give it to Mom, and then Mom can enjoy a good life. I stopped pretending and smiled and asked back, Mom, I haven't graduated yet, and you're already eyeing my salary after I start working. Stop pretending. You supported me to go to university just so you can suck my blood and make me support you in the future. Have you forgotten what you said before? You said I'm an ungrateful person. How can an ungrateful person be a good girl? My mother was completely enraged. She was so angry that she gasped for breath and finally said harshly, Esme, you're really ungrateful. Why didn't I strangle you when you were born? I still smiled and said, Mom, you've raised me so big. Don't you think it's too late to say these things now? This time, she was so angry that she hung up the phone directly, and I blocked all her contact information before she could do anything. 10, in fact. After entering university, I had been doing part-time jobs. I also asked for more living expenses every month, saved money by being thrifty, and saved the extra part. I even found a senior who wrote novels and learned how to write novels from her. Through my efforts, I also had a considerable income from the manuscript fees. You know, in my previous life, before the National Day, the motherland was prosperous, and the new actions shocked the world and became the most brilliant existence. At that time, the stock market also started to soar a few days before the National Day. Especially one stock was like a dark horse, and everyone who invested in it made money, and I didn't miss this opportunity. I used all the money I saved in the past 2 years to buy the stock that would soar in my previous life for short-term investment and made a profit, so cutting off the living expenses didn't matter to me at all. Throughout the semester, my mother didn't give me any more living expenses. And I lived the life I had always dreamed of. I went to work during the day and wrote and played with the dogs at night. The winter and summer vacations were even more pleasant. Unfortunately, the peaceful life was always broken by someone. Soon, my mother asked relatives to inquire about my current situation. The person who came sent a WeChat message asking how I was doing at school and how I was getting by since my mother didn't give me living expenses. I deliberately pretended to be poor and said that I didn't have money and couldn't even afford to eat. I could only go to the cafeteria and shamelessly drink some free soup and water every day. The person told my mother about my situation. Soon, the relative sent me a screenshot of the conversation between my mother and her. When my mother learned that I was living a miserable life, she said triumphantly that I was an ungrateful person and deserved it, until a semester later. My mother called and finally found out that I had blocked all her contact information. She panicked and asked relatives to tell me that as long as I admitted my mistake, she would transfer money to me. I smiled and told the relative, no need, I was lying to her before. In fact, I have enough to eat and drink and I'm very happy. My mother was really angry. She lost her temper with the relative and finally, in a fit of rage, spoke ill of me. I also learned from the relative that my mother spread rumors about me. She told the people around her that I blocked her and she couldn't contact me, but I was living a good life without worrying about food and drink. She also said that I was good looking and since she didn't give me living expenses but I could live comfortably, I must be kept by someone. Otherwise, where did I get so much food and drink? After all, many girls in university became mistresses. This time, I just smiled it off. I also blocked the relative's contact information. 11. The year that I sent Coco and Jojo away, I successfully graduated from university. They left peacefully, leaving their child Declan by my side. I moved out of the place where I used to live and successfully applied for a job as a screenwriter in a big company. After creating several bestsellers, I bought a small apartment with all my savings and even got a driver's license and bought a car. I went to work and created during the weekdays and tipped Declan to the suburbs to enjoy the scenery on weekends. In the past few years, I also heard some news about my mother and father. I heard that my father wasn't doing well. He was old and was laid off by the company. He couldn't find a new job either. He used all his savings and borrowed money to buy an electric car and started running Didi. But he found that the platform took a large commission and the competition was fierce. So he couldn't earn much money. His stepmother disliked that he had no money and was useless. They had a big quarrel and she wanted a divorce. He was in constant turmoil. Later, my father had no choice but to get a divorce, even to fight for the custody of the children. He left the house with nothing. Unfortunately, after the divorce, he found that the 2 children he had fought so hard to raise weren't his biological children. In a fit of anger, he abandoned the 2 children and lost both his money and the children. At this time, he remembered how good my mother was and went to her to ask for a reconciliation, and my mother actually agreed. However, birds of a feather flock together. The 2 of them didn't get along well, even after they remarried. They quarreled a lot, big quarrels every 3 days and small quarrels every 2 days. The 2 of them had no money and the resentment grew. So not long after, the 2 of them, who had remarried, came up with an idea and set their sights on me again. Unfortunately, neither my father nor my mother, nor any of the relatives knew where I was, until finally, they started threatening me and spreading the news everywhere that if I didn't go home, they would call the police and say that I was dead and cancel my household registration. When I heard this news, I was amused. Their ignorance was really ridiculous. My household registration had already been moved away when I was in university, and even if the household registration was to be cancelled because of my death, it had to go through the formal legal process. So, in the face of their useless shouting, I just chose to ignore them. In fact, the reason I paid attention to their news wasn't that I wanted to know whether they were doing well or not, but that I was waiting for an opportunity. An opportunity that would allow me to offset all the resentment from my previous life. 12. In fact, after I died, my soul lingered in the human world for a while. When my mother saw my body, she pretended to wipe her tears in front of everyone and cried loudly, but behind everyone's back, she cursed me. She asked me why I didn't die far away and had to die downstairs. She said, "You knew that this house was going to be sold to buy a wedding house for your younger brother, right? That's why you deliberately jumped off the building to disgust us and make this house unable to be sold. You didn't even die far away. You were a burden when you were alive, and now you're still despised even after death." She even planned to dig a hole in the suburbs and bury me directly, but because it was not allowed by law, she could only take me back to our hometown. Even so, they buried me hastily, but they were very attentive. They found a very famous old Taoist priest to perform a ritual, trying to trap my soul underground and prevent me from being reincarnated. After learning all this, I cat out and begged the old Taoist priest for mercy and told him everything I had experienced. The old Taoist priest sympathized with me. Instead of making me unable to be reincarnated as my mother wanted, he opened the door of life for me and let me have a chance to start over. I still remember the scene at that time. After the old Taoist priest chanted the incantation, he silently added, "She's also a poor soul. I'm willing to trade 20 years of my life to give her a chance." Then a golden light wrapped around me and sent me back to the day when the earthquake happened. Before that, something else happened. A few days after I died, there was another earthquake in my hometown. That earthquake wasn't very strong. I don't know if it was because the house wasn't sturdy or if it was retribution. But while the entire village remained unharmed, only our building was reduced to pieces. Unfortunately, they weren't at home that time otherwise, so that earthquake was exactly the opportunity one had been waiting for. As the day I'd been anticipating drew near, I dialed my mother's cell phone number, 13. When she heard it was me on the other end of the line, my mother sneered, "I thought you were dead. You still remember to call your mother," as my mother cursed at me. My father's voice also reached my ears. "Whose call is it?" My mother said impatiently. "Who else could it be? Isn't it that ungrateful wretch?" My father quickly snatched the phone away and scolded my mother. "What ungrateful wretch? That's our dear daughter." I smiled and continued to listen to their act. Sure enough, after my father grabbed the phone, he started criticizing my mother. "Esme, how have you been all these years? Don't mind your mother's harsh words. In fact, she's talked about you a lot these years. She's all bark and no bite. She's long regretted quarreling with you. Your father also regrets divorcing your mother. Otherwise, your younger brother wouldn't be disabled, and you wouldn't have cut off ties with the family. It's all my fault." At the end, my father even pretended to choke up. Since he started acting, of course I couldn't be left behind. After irritating my eyes with an onion and pinching my thigh, I choked up and said, "Actually, I regret it too, especially when I see other classmates spending holidays with their families while I'm all alone. Dad, please tell Mom I'm sorry. I know I was wrong." My father agreed and excitedly said to my mother, "Did you hear that? Our daughter is apologizing to you. Both children are equally dear. They both came from your womb. I think you two should make up today." Hearing this, my mother hesitated for a moment before agreeing to take the phone. I asked her to put it on speaker and then told them my plan. I told them that I was now self-employed and could earn a lot of money each month. The older I got, the more I understood their hardships, and the more I longed for a complete family. I also said I wanted to move back to my hometown because life there was more peaceful. After hearing this, my parents kept nodding in agreement, complaining to me about how expensive life in the city was, where even drinking water cost money, and how much better it was in the village. They also said that the house in the hometown had already been renovated and I could live there if I went back. Secretly delighted, I started painting a rosy picture for them. I told them I had saved some money and planned to use it for my younger brother's wedding. I also asked them to clean up the old house first. I would order a new set of furniture online, replace all the old things, and told them to return the rented house in the city and move back to the hometown first. Then we could hold the wedding there. This way, it would not only be convenient to hold the wedding but also easier for matchmakers to introduce suitable partners. After all, it was harder to find city girls who knew each other well compared to those from the hometown. Finally, I also ordered a refrigerator, a TV, and other large furniture online. After doing all this, I showed them the order screenshots. I told them to leave for home immediately to clean up, and I would be back in a few days. Seeing my sincerity, my mother and the others agreed. 14. I don't know if it was because they were thinking about arranging a marriage for Dean soon, but my parents acted extremely quickly. Early the next morning, they sent me photos of themselves on a minibus heading back to the countryside. Grandma, Dad, Mom, and my younger brother were all in the photos. I replied, "Okay, you go home and get ready first. I have some work to deal with here. It will probably take a few days. I'll be back as soon as I'm done." My parents didn't suspect anything and even reported to me the progress of cleaning the house over the next 2 days. On the third day, my father remembered the furniture I bought and messaged me asking why it hadn't arrived yet. In fact, right after taking the order screenshots, I immediately requested a refund. The so-called furniture would never be delivered to the house. So I told him that since our home was in the countryside and the items were large, it was inconvenient for delivery. Besides, I checked and it would only arrive the next day. Although my father felt a bit reassured, he still wasn't completely at ease. Finally, he simply messaged, "We're making arrangements for your brother's marriage. The blind dates will start tomorrow. Why don't you transfer the betrothal gift money to your mother first? Then when your brother goes on the blind dates, we'll have more confidence. By the way, you know that these days, the betrothal gift money has gone up. We can't do it without $1 million or so. We can't let others look down on us." The message came in at 9 o'clock in the evening. I glanced at it but didn't reply. Instead, I continued working on the latest script I had taken on. In the middle of the night, my phone issued a piercing earthquake alarm. I woke up from my sleep and saw the aftershock alert. The high-rise building I lived in shook gently, but my social media feed was in an uproar. When I opened the web, news about the earthquake in my hometown was everywhere. Just like in my previous life, the earthquake wasn't very strong, centered around the entire village. Fortunately, except for our family, everyone else only suffered minor injuries. Only our newly renovated two-story house was in ruins again due to the earthquake. The next morning, someone from the village called my cell phone. The first thing they said when I answered was, "Is this Georgia and Barrett's daughter?" I replied yes, and then they told me that my father, mother, grandmother, and younger brother were all buried under the rubble. God knows, when I heard this news, I could barely contain myself and almost laughed out loud, overwhelmed with joy. I had to hold the phone away from me and kept pinching my thigh hard to stop myself from laughing. After calming down, I pretended to choke up, asked about their situation, and said I would take a bus home immediately. 15. After a 4-hour drive, I finally returned to my hometown. The first thing I did was to confirm whether they were dead or not. Unfortunately, they were all still alive. The silver lining was that both my parents were paralyzed, and my younger brother, by an odd twist of fate, had his genitals crushed. Only my grandmother, who went out to use the toilet in the middle of the night, survived unharmed. Now, 3 people in the family were paralyzed. My grandmother cried and asked me, "Girl, what should we do now? There was already one disabled person in the family, and now there are 2 more. Why is God so unfair, picking on our family like this?" After saying that, she wiped away her tears and grabbed my hand. "Girl, from now on, your grandmother, your parents, we're all counting on you." I silently pulled my hand back, looking at the 3 people who had just come out of the emergency room and were still lying in bed. I said calmly, "Don't worry too much for now. Let's take it one step at a time. Grandma, I'm glad you're okay." My grandmother didn't understand the hidden meaning in my words and just nodded in agreement. "That's right. I'm already so old. If I had been hit, I might have ended up in a coffin." While my grandmother was out, I looked at my unconscious parents, lying neatly in their beds, and said calmly, "Dad, Mom, there was never any furniture. I just made up an excuse to get you home. Now that I see you lying here like this, I'm at peace." Then I told them everything that happened in my previous life. Finally, I couldn't help but sigh. It's a pity that from start to finish, you never knew I was looking forward to this day. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw tears streaming down my father's and mother's faces. Everything proved to me that I had been reborn. This was their perfect ending. In the evening, I made an excuse to go out and buy food, bought a ticket, and left for good. No matter what happened to them in the future, my grandmother would have a hard time. After all, she was old, and now she had to take care of 3 disabled people. Just thinking about it made me feel sorry for her. 16. I returned to the city where I used to live. Perhaps it was fate. Once, when I took Declan to the countryside for a walk, I saw the old Taoist priest who had helped me in my previous life. In my previous life, when I saw him at this time, he was only in his early 50s, but this time, he was already an old man with white hair, looking very wise and immortal-like. Tears welled up in my eyes immediately. I walked up to him and kowtowed 3 times and bowed 9 times. The Taoist priest looked at me, speechless for a long time. Finally, he said, "You look very familiar, young lady. Have we met somewhere before?" I didn't say much but begged him to take me as his disciple. The old Taoist priest said I shouldn't be bound and refused to accept me as a disciple, but since he had no wife, no children, he could take me as his daughter. I immediately knelt down and kowtowed, calling him father. After that, I continued to live in the city and create. On weekends, I would take Declan to the Taoist temple on the mountain, where I would tell my adoptive father about what I had seen and heard and other interesting things. I knew that a kind person like my adoptive father would live a long, long life, and I, having embraced a bright future, would also accompany him with Declan for a long time. Story 2. After being attacked by zombies, I found myself transported back to 10 days before the outbreak of the zombie virus. To survive, I had to lay low and be cautious. I then stole my dad's secret stash of money and started stockpiling supplies. The scene was terrifyingly real. Chaotic streets, people screaming and scattering, countless zombies madly lunging at me. I was pinned to the ground, the blood-stained fangs growing closer to my face. Just before I lost consciousness, I could hear the sound of bones being crushed. I thought I was a goner, but then, a jarring ringtone from a cell phone suddenly woke me, still enveloped by the terror of death. I quickly opened my eyes, jumped out of bed, grabbed a fruit knife from the nightstand, and cautiously surveyed my surroundings. Then, I was shocked. I found myself in a small, cozy 10-square-meter room. My desk was cluttered with homework I hadn't finished the night before, reminding me that I had returned to the world before the virus outbreak. How did I get back home? Ugh, my head hurt so much. Holding my throbbing forehead, I collapsed on the bed. Recalling the events that led up to the zombie bite, my name is Lillian, a typical recent graduate who failed last year's college entrance exam and was sent to a cram school by my dad. But not long after I started the repeat year, the zombie virus broke out. Within 2 days, the city had completely fallen, and zombies were everywhere. I had been wandering outside for a year, and the apocalyptic crisis never seemed to improve. Eventually, unable to resist the longing for home, I risked crossing through zombie-infested territories and was subsequently overwhelmed by a horde of ferocious zombies. As these bloody memories flashed through my mind, I started to doubt if it was all a nightmare when I heard a familiar voice urging me from outside the door. "Lillian, why aren't you up yet? Breakfast is ready." It was my mom's voice. I was thrilled, pushed open the door, and saw my mom and sister busy preparing breakfast for the family around the stove. It was a warm and happy scene. My dad was lounging on the sofa reading the newspaper. Seeing me, he stood up and said, "Lillian, it's okay that you didn't pass the college entrance exam. The most important thing is not to give up hope. I've enrolled you in several more cram schools. Push a little harder and try again next year." Everything was just like in the dream, I remembered. After having this breakfast, I went to the cram school. In 10 days, the zombie virus would break out completely, and I would lose contact with my family, uncertain of their safety until the moment I was bitten and killed by zombies. It wasn't a dream. Shaking my head, I forced myself to calm down and said to my dad, "The tuition for the cram school is too expensive. Let me study at home instead. Don't worry about the tuition fees." Just like in my memory, my dad casually opened a drawer, handed me a bank card, and said, "Your job is to study hard and get into a good university next year. Don't let your mom and me down." "Got it, Dad." Taking the tuition money, I nodded vigorously, my mind already made up. This time, I was determined to protect them. After hurriedly eating a few bites of the meal my mom made, I rushed downstairs. Reuniting with my family felt great, but I no longer had time to enjoy the warmth of home. With only 10 days left until the apocalypse, I had to use the survival skills I learned while on the run, helping my family through this crisis. Firstly, I need to choose a suitable location to build a safe house that can accommodate a family of 4. The apartment buildings in the neighborhood are too high and too crowded, housing thousands of people, each of whom could become an unpredictable factor. In the early stages of the zombie virus outbreak, there will likely be a mass infection among the people. It's uncertain whether the neighbors upstairs and downstairs will turn into biting monsters. Additionally, zombies have a keen sense of smell. The more densely populated the area, the more susceptible it is to attacks. Therefore, I set my sights on the suburbs, which are neither too remote nor too crowded, making it the ideal place for our family to hide. Half an hour later, I arrived near a factory just outside a suburban residential area. There used to be several medium-sized businesses here, but they have been completely abandoned due to economic transition. The rust streaked gates of the abandoned factory were plastered with several rental ads offering cheap rates. Using the phone number on the ads, I contacted the landlord. When he heard that I wanted to rent the entire warehouse, he was surprised. "Ma'am, what do you need such a large warehouse for?" I pulled out the money I had just withdrawn from the bank. "I plan to open an online store, and I need your warehouse for stocking goods. This is the rent for the first quarter. Please count it." The basement storage had been abandoned for a long time and it was rare for someone to want to rent it. After taking the money, the landlord didn't ask any further questions about what I intended to do, and hurriedly left after dropping off the keys, as if afraid I might change my mind. However, I smiled satisfactorily. With just this small amount of rent, I secured such a large safe house. Although the lease was only for 3 months, I wasn't worried about the landlord coming after me for rent once it expired. After 3 months, zombies would be rampant in the city, and the landlord would definitely have other concerns than chasing me for the rent. After getting the keys, I chose a basement storage room, cleaned it up, and fortified it. With the tuition fees sponsored by my dad, I contacted a renovation company. The workers brought thick steel bars to weld all the air vents shut, ensuring normal air circulation while preventing zombies from crawling in. While replacing the windows with tempered glass, I also installed a periscope for observing the outside. 2 days later, the remodeling was almost complete. The workers, puzzled, asked, "Ma'am, you even installed a periscope. Are you planning to play real-life CS?" I casually replied, "The neighborhood security isn't great. I'm considering safety too." In addition to the periscope, I also bought a 60% new drone through a second-hand platform online. It wasn't cheap, and in just 2 days, the tuition fees for my dad were all spent. Fortunately, the safe house modifications were largely complete. The next thing to consider was quickly figuring out a way to raise money and stock up on enough supplies. At 8 in the evening, I dragged my tired feet home. Dinner had already ended, and while my mom reheated some dishes for me, she tenderly rubbed my head. You finish classes at the tutoring center so late. Please don't overwork yourself. I hadn't heard my mom nag in a long time, and it warmed my heart. Holding back tears, I said, "Don't worry, Mom. The hard work now is for our family's future." My dad, who was wiping the table, paused for a moment and gave me a look of relief. It seems our son has truly grown up, I thought, feeling a pang of emotion in my nose. In the past, I was so irresponsible, often skipping school to play online games, causing endless worry for my parents, but not anymore. One night, while my dad was in the shower, I secretly opened his wallet, certain that the bank pin was my mom's birthday. Over the years, he had managed to save quite a bit of money without my mom knowing. I had known about this for a long time. The next day, I woke up early, pretending to go back to my training class for a makeup session, but instead, I hid myself away. It wasn't until after 8 a.m., when both my parents had left for work, that I sneaked back to find the car keys. We owned a small pickup truck that my dad used for deliveries, usually parked in the garage and seldom used. I planned to borrow it to transport supplies. With the apocalypse looming, resources would become extremely scarce, and I had to stock up on all necessary provisions before its arrival. The first issue to address was food, given the prolonged duration of the virus. I opted for foods suitable for long-term storage, such as military compressed biscuits and chocolate. These foods were calorie-dense and had the advantages of being compact, lightweight, and durable, making them easy to carry without spoiling easily. The downside was their monotony, which would make them hard to stomach over time. To diversify the flavors, I also bought plenty of biscuits and canned goods, including both fruit and beef varieties, which were also suitable for long storage and straightforward consumption without the need for heating. Besides these, fresh fruits and vegetables were essential. In the afternoon, I made a trip to a seed company to purchase seeds for various fruits and vegetables. Once back at the safe house, I began cultivating a vegetable garden. Next, I had to tackle the issue of drinking water. In the post-apocalyptic world, the accumulation of numerous corpses would severely contaminate the groundwater, making the price of a bottle of mineral water comparable to gold. I had seen a woman die a horrific death from consuming contaminated groundwater, her body severely decayed. To address the water supply, I constructed a simple filtration system in the safe house and dug a large reservoir to collect rainwater. I planted many shade-loving plants in the water reservoir to help purify it. Additionally, I bought several truckloads of bottled water, anticipating dry seasons when rain might not fall for extended periods. Having secured food and water, the next step was to gather medicines. The post-apocalyptic environment was harsh, filled not only with zombies that could bite but also various viruses and bacteria. Even a common cold or flu could threaten the safety of my family. Considering the strict government control over medications, I had no choice but to drive the old pickup around, scavenging for drugs. I bought dozens of boxes of cold medicine, including some for treating bruises and sprains, and prepared a full basket of these, along with bandages, various disinfectants, and antibiotics to last several years. This process was lengthy, and to avoid exposing the location of the safe house, I personally carried all supplies back. While stocking up, I systematically inspected the safe house to identify any shortcomings and made immediate repairs as needed. Although the underground storage room was structurally solid, it was not without its flaws. Without a sewage system, living there would inevitably generate various kinds of household waste. In a post-apocalyptic world, even taking out the trash is perilous, as you risk zombie attacks or threats from homeless wanderers. Therefore, after securing food, water, and medical supplies, I knew I needed to arm myself for personal protection. I opted for a firefighter's axe and a retractable baton, compact, lightweight, and reasonably powerful. Additionally, I gathered some everyday essentials, such as flashlights, toilet paper, and garbage bags. Most supplies were easy to come by and available at the local market, but purchasing feminine hygiene products alone was embarrassingly awkward. Can you picture a 19-year-old guy hustling alongside middle-aged women at a discount sale for sanitary pads? It was mortifying. When I went to check out with a cart full of goods, the cashier's odd stares made me wish I could dig a hole and hide, but for the sake of making life easier for my family, I'd endure being seen as a weirdo. During those days, I was constantly busy with preparations for the impending doom. It wasn't long before I faced a significant crisis. Somehow, my dad found out I had dipped into his emergency fund. When I got home one day, he was waiting at the door, confronting me about it. My dad believes in tough love, and had he discovered my secret use of the funds, I wouldn't have needed to wait for a zombie outbreak for him to finish me off. I couldn't admit to it, so to divert his attention, I exposed his secret stash of money instead. "What? You dare keep secret cash?" My mom, who was doing laundry, exploded with anger and dragged Dad by the ear into the bedroom, sparing me a beating. That night, I eavesdropped as my dad knelt on the washboard, trying to defend himself. I thought to myself, hang in there, Dad, Mom will forgive you once the apocalypse arrives. The emergency fund issue soon blew over, but my family's suspicion towards me only grew. I was too preoccupied to focus on my studies and was exhausted from all the early mornings and late nights. The next day, my sister Stella cornered me. What have you been up to lately? I saw you scrambling with those women for discounted sanitary pads at the supermarket. It was so embarrassing. Embarrassed and after much thought, I decided to tell her the truth. I had been inventing excuses for my parents' constant inquiries, and it was giving me a headache. I realized I couldn't keep my action secret forever, so I confessed to her. Stella, only a year younger and about to enter her final year of high school, has always been lively and open to new ideas. Moved by my situation, she hugged my arm and chided. Why didn't you tell Mom and Dad about this sooner? I replied with a wry smile. You know what our parents are like. They'd never believe this. Keep it a secret for now. I'll tell them when the time is right. Stella agreed and even offered her own savings to support my plans. With her help, we purchased more essentials and stocked up on Stella's favorite snacks like ham sausages, dried cheese, pine nuts, and sunflower seeds. Considering the unpredictable post-apocalypse climate, I prepared several sets of winter cotton clothes for everyone and amassed a plethora of summer attire, including anti-slip sneakers with steel studs, masks for viral protection, various bedding items, and disposable underwear and socks. We also packed several boxes of supplies. Stella, being meticulous, had taken the time to learn various vegetable gardening techniques online and spent considerable time selecting the seeds we needed to plant. She reminded me that the lighting conditions in the safe house were poor and not all fruits and vegetables could adapt to this environment. We should focus on cultivating vegetables like cabbage and potatoes. She also pointed out that subsisting on compressed biscuits and canned food would lead to nutritional deficiencies over time. It would be better to raise some poultry in the safe house for a regular supply of fresh protein to keep illnesses at bay. This posed a problem for me, as the safe house wasn't designed for keeping poultry, and raising animals would require a significant amount of feed. Moreover, without timely cleaning of animal waste, the place would soon become uninhabitable. However, Stella smiled and said, I've already thought of a solution. Remember the water reservoir you built? We can utilize it to raise fish, which would also help purify the water. As for the feed, there was no need to worry. Fish feed was readily available and affordable in the market. As long as the filtration system in the fish pond was powerful enough, it wouldn't affect the use of water. I smacked my forehead and exclaimed, You're brilliant, let's do it. With the money ready, everything moved quickly. Just one day before the virus outbreak, I had stockpiled enough supplies to last our family for 3 years and installed traps around the main entrance to fend off zombies. The years of exile had not been in vain. Relying on these survival skills, I had fortified the safe house securely. Despite this, Stella couldn't help but worry. Sis, our supplies will only last for 3 years. What will we do after that? I patted her little head and reassured her. Based on past experiences, the government would immediately invest in vaccine research and production after the outbreak. Given our country's capabilities, 3 years should be sufficient to develop an effective cure. If we could last these 3 years, I was confident that order would be restored to the human world. After moving everything, it was almost dark. Stella lifted her phone and said, Let's go home, it's getting late, and Mom and Dad will be worried. I shook my head. Let's not go back tonight. Let's get used to life here first. If anything is lacking, we can still make improvements early on. Stella hesitated. Aren't you worried about Mom and Dad? I grinned mischievously. It's good if they worry, otherwise, how can I trick them into coming here? Our parents were quite conservative and wouldn't accept such an absurd reality. If I told them the truth outright, they would not only disbelieve me but might also subject me to a merciless intervention, potentially leaving me crippled. The only solution was to make Stella and myself disappear. Once panicked, they would follow the clues I had left at home and find their way to the safe house. I ruefully told Stella, once Mom and Dad find us, I'll figure out a way to hold them here. You'll lock the main door from inside. Once the zombie virus breaks out outside, they were too preoccupied to beat me up, I thought. Events unfolded just as I had anticipated. On the day the virus broke out, the sky was exceptionally gloomy. Birds flew in flocks over the safe house, and even stray cats and dogs barked restlessly. I was crouched down, inspecting the filtration system in the safe house, when suddenly I heard the main door being kicked open. Turning around, I saw my parents, their faces livid with anger, storming in. I quickly signaled to Stella to close the back door while I hurriedly got up to meet them. Before I could utter the explanation I had rehearsed, my dad roared, You little rascal, rebelling, are you? And kicked me. I stumbled, and with a mix of tears and laughter, tried to explain the situation to my dad, who was too enraged to listen and slapped me several times. leaving me dizzy. Seeing the situation turning bad, Stella quickly shut the door and then tried to stop my dad, saying, "Dad, my sister and I didn't mean to hide this from you. Listen, the zombie virus is about to break out. She did this to save our family." "What?" Both my parents froze, gripping Stella's hand, demanding to know what was going on. I took the opportunity to get up, rubbing my swollen cheek. Reflecting on how heavy the word fatherly love truly weighed, my dad, still skeptical, pulled Stella aside and hesitantly approached me. "Son, is all of this true?" Tired of explaining, I pulled out my phone and opened a live news broadcast. On the screen, the news anchor, reading from a cliched script, was emphasizing the supposed stability within the country compared to the chaos abroad. Suddenly, a staff member rushed into the studio, handing the anchor a note. The anchor's face changed immediately. "We interrupt this program with urgent news. A highly infectious virus has been reported in our city, with numerous citizens already infected. The government urges everyone to stay at home and avoid getting infected." As we were all intently watching the news, numerous cries of alarm could be heard outside the safe house. I quickly looked through the periscope and saw blood-covered individuals running from the suburban areas, followed by others with hunched postures. These were no longer people, despite wearing regular clothes. Their torsos were covered with grotesque wounds oozing dark fluid, and their skin displayed an unnatural bluish-black hue. The most terrifying aspect was their teeth, sharp like those of a shark, certainly not human. Their movements were twisted and eerie, yet their speed was alarming, quickly catching up to their targets. Soon, the person in front was tackled down, and the street echoed with his agonizing screams. I stepped aside to let my dad look through the periscope. There was no need for visuals. The terrifying screams from outside the vent were enough evidence. After a while, quiet returned outside. Both my parents, pale-faced, slumped on the sofa, murmuring, "It's true, such outrageous things really happened." I comforted my dad. "Don't worry, trust that the country can handle these zombies. However, it might take a long time, probably at least 2 to 3 years. For now, our family of 4 must live inside this safe house." I remembered that right after the outbreak of the zombie virus, the government would immediately initiate emergency plans. Focused research and treatment of the virus were initiated, but the spread was alarmingly rapid. Within just a few days, it had swept across the entire country, resulting in massive casualties and significantly complicating relief efforts. By the time I was bitten, no effective cure had been developed. All we could do was wait. My mother was speechless for a long time until her emotions stabilized. Then she began to scold me, questioning why I hadn't informed them about the situation sooner. Rubbing my stinging cheek, I responded with a bitter smile. "If I had told you earlier, would I have been any better off? Didn't Dad just beat me up? It still hurts." My mother rolled her eyes at me. "Doesn't it hurt when your dad hits you? Look at you. You almost made your dad sprain his finger," listening to the screams outside. My parents were extremely worried, but I remained calm. The zombies were indeed numerous, but the suburban population was not as dense as in the city center, with several urban-rural areas nearby. The zombies were attracted to the more populated regions and were less likely to target us. Our safe house was sturdily built, and it was unlikely that zombies could breach it. After several busy days, I was exhausted, instructed my dad to secure the front door, and went back to bed. When I woke up the next morning, my parents were still anxiously guarding the door, refusing to leave. Thankfully, my sister Stella had taken the initiative to prepare meals for us, understanding the stress our parents were under. Since the outbreak of the zombie virus was recent, the city's water and electricity were still functioning, apart from being confined to our safe house. Life for our family of 4 hadn't changed drastically, however. The previous day's events had caused my parents to lose their appetite. After barely managing a few sips of porridge, my dad began to pace anxiously, muttering about the chaos outside and worrying about his colleagues. All I could do was reassure him and suggest focusing on our future as a family. Although my actions might seem selfish in my father's eyes, I'm neither a saint nor do I have the capacity to save everyone. Being able to build this safe house and take care of my family was already the limit of my abilities. Stella was very timid. She had spent the past few days near the periscope, crying at the dire situation outside and seeking comfort in the arms of my dad and me, trembling and questioning, what if those monsters break through? Is the door strong enough? What if the zombies get inside? I patted her forehead and reassured her, "Don't worry, Dad and I will definitely protect you and Mom. As the only 2 males in the family, it was our duty to take care of them." In my spare time, I began to work out and took up the prepared firefighting axe and telescopic baton, placing them within easy reach. My dad had adapted to our new reality and began patrolling and checking the safe house's defenses, identifying areas for improvement, working at a mechanical plant. He had strong practical skills and spent a few days fixing any oversights I had missed. My mom and Stella took on the responsibility of growing fruits and feeding fish, and they learned some basic nursing skills. In such a harsh survival environment, no one could guarantee they wouldn't get injured or fall ill. Having these nursing skills could better help us take care of our family. Fortunately, the city's infrastructure was still relatively good. Despite the virus outbreak lasting for 5 or 6 days, our safe house still had running water and electricity. The mobile signal was unaffected. Stella would occasionally check her phone and use chat apps to contact her classmates to discuss life after the apocalypse. Honestly, everyone was living miserably. The sudden catastrophe plunged the city into unprecedented chaos. All factories had shut down, and zombies could be seen everywhere on the streets, completely paralyzing traffic. Initially, some people placed their hopes on the government, but I knew the disaster was too widespread. Even national-level rescue efforts couldn't keep up with the pace at which the disaster was spreading. Outside, the transportation had completely collapsed, making it impossible for rescue supplies to reach those in need. Many people, while searching for supplies, were surrounded and attacked by zombies. Those who survived often fought each other over food. It was indescribably tragic. By comparison, our family was practically living in paradise, without any disruption to electricity or water. Mom even showcased her cooking skills by preparing a pot of braised fish, the aroma of which had both Dad and me drooling. However, after eating our fill, I reminded Mom not to use open flames for cooking anymore. Her cooking skills were indeed exceptional, but the smell of food could easily drift out through the vent and attract other survivors in these apocalyptic times. The human heart is the most complex. Once our hiding place was exposed, our safe house would no longer be safe. Dad agreed and also cautioned Mom. Also, when you and Stella use your phones to find out about the outside world, make sure not to reveal any information about us. It's best to set your status to invisible to avoid attracting attention. In an environment where supplies were extremely scarce and zombies were everywhere, our family was dripping with riches, able to indulge in luxuries like braised fish, which made us a target of envy. I was most worried about Stella. Her lack of experience made her vulnerable to being tricked during online chats with classmates, so I urged Mom to keep a close eye on her and ensure that she didn't reveal anything she shouldn't. Our family was extremely cautious, watching as the world outside fell deeper into chaos, and all we could do was worry helplessly. In the third week of the virus outbreak, the city lost power, all electrical devices stopped working, and we could no longer use our phones to learn about the outside situation. But I knew that the outside world was only getting more chaotic. The entire city was without electricity, and the survivors' days were only getting tougher, and this was just the beginning. 2 weeks after the power cut, the water supply also failed. If it had just been a power outage, people could have stayed indoors and endured it. But the lack of water meant that survivors living in high-rise buildings could no longer stay in their homes and had to risk moving to places closer to water sources. This massive migration brought disastrous consequences. The zombies, always ready for a feast, would not let them go easily. This hypothesis was soon confirmed. On the 25th day of the outbreak, dense screams suddenly came from a residential area in the suburbs, although there had been screams outside during this period. Such large-scale screaming was unheard of before. The continuous screams caught the attention of the entire family. Dad hurriedly looked through the periscope, only to recoil after one glance, his face pale as he said, "Outside, there are so many people. They are being attacked by zombies. There are bodies everywhere. It's terrible." I didn't say anything, because I had already anticipated this situation. Less than 2 kilometers from the safe house, there is a suburban area where at least 10,000 people reside. After experiencing water and power outages, these people are bound to flee their homes in search of food and water sources. Zombies, following the scent of these people, launch attacks midway. The number of those who manage to find water and survive is extremely small. The situation is tragic. Through the periscope, I can see people being chased by zombies everywhere. Some are trapped in their cars with their families, while others are dragged to the side of the road and viciously bitten by zombies. I even saw a pregnant woman being devoured alive by zombies. Those who are attacked soon stagger to their feet, either numbly wandering in circles or lunging at the nearest person. The gory scene is chilling and evokes a sense of shared misery. With so many people moving together, it's inevitable that they will all be wiped out by zombies. If our family leaves the safe house, we're essentially walking into danger. Stella is already terrified, curling up in the corner. With every scream from outside, she shudders violently, holding my arm in despair. "Sis, maybe we should try to save them. It's just too awful." "Foolish girl, we need to take care of ourselves first. In this situation, we might not even be able to save ourselves," I replied. "I'm not heartless. Hearing the screams of others inevitably pains my heart. However, I can't play the saint and put ourselves in danger for the sake of others. We've witnessed too much death recently, and it has numbed us. Every couple of days, people venture out in search of food and water, and their fates are usually grim, with fewer than 20% making it back alive. Of course, people won't just sit and wait for death. Many choose to flee with their families, but their fates are equally tragic." One day, while I was watering the potatoes, I suddenly heard my sister's cry of alarm and rushed to check on her. I saw a group of 7 people, Both men and women, all young, wearing sunglasses and masks, wrapped up tightly, running towards the parking lot of the residential area. They cautiously avoided areas heavily infested with zombies. I'm familiar with such scenes. The residential area is too dangerous, and every day people try to drive out of the city. But I know that even if they manage to escape to another city, their fate will be the same. The surrounding cities have already fallen, and this action is hardly better than waiting to die at home. These people were somewhat clever. 4 of them went to open the car doors, while the other 3 kept watch. They even placed an alarm clock at a distance to try to distract the zombies with the noise. However, they underestimated the scale of the zombies. Soon after the alarm went off, hordes of zombies appeared. The 3 keeping watch were quickly surrounded. I heard the fierce sounds of struggle and the excited howls of the zombies. The people in the car panicked, quickly abandoning the vehicle and clumsily rushing into a building, with a large group of zombies following them. I couldn't see exactly what happened, but continuous screams soon began. The zombies broke into the building and began hunting down the escapees. Within minutes, a portly man screamed as he jumped out of the window to escape, but was quickly tackled and bitten by zombies outside, turning into a bloody mess. The scene was heart-wrenching. I averted my gaze and sighed to my dad. It looks like we're going to have a few more infected near the settlement. Life inside the safe house was oppressive. Not only did we have to guard against the threat of zombies, but we also had to endure the constant barrage of gruesome death scenes. Honestly, it was tough on the spirit. The only solace was the plants we had previously planted in the cultivation room, which had begun to take root and sprout. These tender plants seemed to represent the miracle of new life, bringing us a bit of comfort for the soul. At lunch, Mom made an extra dish to celebrate these sprouting lives. After eating, Dad and I went to the vegetable garden to carefully water them. But before we finished watering, I heard the roaring sound of car engines outside, followed by a broadcast. Citizens, we are rescue team members. The nation has not abandoned everyone. Please, upon hearing this broadcast, quickly bring food and water and gather at the square. We will lead everyone out of the city to a place free from the virus and zombies to start a new life. The broadcast repeated several times, mainly focusing on the outskirts where the city meets the countryside. Mom and Stella were thrilled, immediately dropping their watering tools. Great. The rescue team has finally come. We can be saved. As they started packing to leave, Dad and I exchanged glances and quickly stopped them. Don't go. It could be a trap. It had only been 2 months since the virus outbreak, and several nearby cities had already fallen. The whole country was shrouded in the shadow of the apocalypse. It was too soon for a rescue team to arrive. In my previous life, I had waited nearly half a year without seeing any large-scale rescue. Logic told me that this rescue team outside was a hoax. Mom, startled, questioned how it could be possible. If these people weren't from a rescue team, why would they broadcast to lure us out? Most likely to steal supplies, I guessed. I immediately grabbed the periscope, adjusted the angle, and looked in the direction of the broadcast. Sure enough, what arrived were not rescue vehicles but a hodgepodge of private cars. These people parked on the roadside and used the broadcast to lure unsuspecting survivors, demanding those with food and water leave their supplies behind. Those who came for help without anything were violently driven away. Some people who couldn't stand it and confronted these rescue teams were immediately beaten up. They were nothing but a gang of bandits. Thank goodness we didn't go out just now, or the consequences would have been unimaginable, I said. Mom also saw everything through the periscope, her face turning pale as she collapsed onto the couch. Stella cried helplessly. These people are so cruel. How can they do this? Everyone is already living so miserably, and they even want to take away the little food we have left. It's utterly inhumane. I gave a wry smile. Perhaps this is human nature. The apocalypse truly tests humanity in such extreme conditions. The bloody reality gradually surfaces. Many refugees, under these circumstances, spontaneously band together, forming bands that roam around looting and killing. At night, when the zombies are most active, members of the gang find a place to hide and wait for dawn. During the day, when the sunlight is strongest and the zombies are least active, they sneak into residential areas to carry out their looting plans. Fortunately, not everyone is foolish. Having witnessed the gang's actions, the surviving residents refuse to show themselves. The vehicles parked outside for a long time don't manage to gather much in the way of supplies. The gang leader then changes tactics, shockingly decides to go door to door, armed with weapons, forcing the vulnerable, like widows and orphans, to hand over their food. My father, enraged by what he sees, says, "Lillian, we can't just watch this happen. These people keep roaming around nearby, and they're a threat to us. It would be disastrous if they found this safe house." I hesitate and ask my father what he plans to do. He can't think of anything immediately. Frustrated, he keeps pinching his thigh. My mother quickly tries to calm him down, arguing that it's better to let it go since they outnumber us, look menacing, and are heavily armed. We simply can't provoke them. While my parents are caught up arguing, I, peering through the periscope, spot several zombies wandering aimlessly like headless flies. An idea suddenly strikes me. I approach my father and suggest that we could use the zombies to drive away these troublemakers. My father, puzzled, asks how I plan to do that. Looking at the fish swimming in the water tank, a bold plan forms in my mind. Zombies have an acute sense of smell and hearing, especially sensitive to anything with a fishy scent. The robbers don't dare to be too reckless. They cover themselves up tightly to prevent any scent from leaking and attracting a zombie assault. We could use scent to lure the zombies to them. Around 5 in the afternoon, when the sun is setting and the zombies begin to stir from cool places, my father and I decide to act. If the plan is executed correctly, it would be a one-way trip for the gang. We finally put to use an expensive drone we had bought earlier. After a simple dinner, I carefully release the drone through the ventilating window. My mother and Stella catch a large live carp, and my father is tasked with killing it. Deliberately smearing the blood and guts all over the drone, he even hangs the smelliest parts of the guts on the drone using a rope. After checking everything one last time, I position myself under the periscope, observing the outside while controlling the drone, loaded with fresh fish guts, to hover over the street outside. The drone's remote control range is 3 kilometers. Just enough to attract the zombies to their target. As expected, the mindless zombies quickly fall for it. The fish itself carries a natural fishy smell, and with the drone smeared in fish blood, it proves fatally enticing to the zombies. All the zombies gather around the drone, making excited, growling noises. However, as the drone flies high, the zombies can't reach it. Despite their jumping, they clumsily follow it, and soon reach near the square where the gang members are still scavenging for food. Caught off guard by the swift arrival of the zombies, the gang members realize too late what's happening. The drone hovers directly above them, the smell of blood emanating from it enough to drive the zombies into a frenzy, who rush to encircle the square. Initially, the zombies are only interested in my drone, but soon they find a more intriguing target. The gang members, like a group of sharks that smell blood, swiftly shift their focus and pounce on them. Several robbers armed with axes were quickly surrounded by zombies. The crowd panicked and began to scatter, but the number of zombies closing in was considerable. Soon, the last 3 people at the back were tackled to the ground. Those who were tackled began to scream for help, hoping their companions would rescue them. However, such mobs are typically disorganized and self-centered in critical moments, so no one was willing to help those tackled by the zombies. The robbers quickly dispersed. A few lucky ones managed to dive into an SUV, ramming through the zombies to escape, but many others didn't manage to start their cars in time and had to climb onto the roofs to temporarily evade the zombies. Unfortunately, the zombies didn't let them off easily. Soon, the area beneath the vehicles was swarming with zombies. Some people were grabbed by their legs and dragged under, while more zombies climbed up the doors. The horrifying screams soon filled the street. I crouched in the safe house, my face grim. Although the robbers were driven away, the number and hunting capability of the zombies sent chills down our spines. The number of zombies in the area was increasing, quickly turning it into a zombie land. My dad sighed repeatedly, patted my shoulder, and suggested I retrieve the drone first. I carefully controlled the drone back. After retrieving it, I made an unexpected discovery. Following behind my drone was another unfamiliar drone, with a blood-stained cloth hanging from its wing, scribbled with hasty handwriting. "You must be the survivors living under the storage room. I'm the owner of Unit 603 in Nanhua Community. Do you have any medical supplies? My wife has a fever. Please help us." Seeing the message on the cloth made me nervous since it exposed the location of our safe house, which could be highly disadvantageous for my family. My dad analyzed. Nanhua Community is near the plaza, less than 2 kilometers from our safe house. Probably the owner of that apartment saw you operating the drone and hastily wrote this plea for help, sending it with our drone. My mom and Stella, kind-hearted as they are, urged me to help this family. I hesitated, but revealing wealth brings troubles. If we help the requester, how can we ensure they won't turn on us? My mom replied, "Don't think so poorly of everyone. That family wouldn't have written this plea if they weren't desperate." At my mom's insistence, I decided to act kindly. Our safe house had a good stock of medical supplies, including fever reducers and antibiotics. I tied these medicines to the undercarriage of the unfamiliar drone and monitored its flight direction through the periscope. Sure enough, in a residential building on the plaza, a window was quickly opened, and a man wearing glasses cautiously reached out to retrieve the medicines. Then, he attached a gift box under the drone and sent it back to us. When I opened the gift box, I found 2 pieces of smoked sausage inside. My mom clapped her hands excitedly. "I told you, good deeds bring good rewards, and finally, we can enjoy a change of taste." I felt grateful that the family knew how to reciprocate kindness. For the next while, I occasionally communicated with the family in Unit 603 via the drone. I learned that the glasses-wearing man was a high school teacher, living with his wife. Since the outbreak, they had been trapped at home. Fortunately, their apartment was on the top floor with a staircase leading directly to the rooftop, where the man had planted various vegetables and fruits, along with a stock of smoked sausages. They were managing to survive. Although his wife was not in good health, our house was always short on medicines. We began to share what we had. If the man next door lacked medicine, I would send some over using a drone. In return, he gave us some smoked bacon and even used his knowledge in physics to help me improve our water recycling filtration system. After spending over half a year in the safe house, our family of 4 had fully adapted to this lifestyle. The potatoes and eggplants we had planted were now yielding a bountiful harvest. Those days, my parents were overjoyed, busy harvesting the fresh vegetables to be dried and preserved by Stella. I finally tasted fresh melons and the long-missed aroma of vegetables exploded on my taste buds. It was incredibly delightful. One evening, my mother approached me and said, "The family at 603 is having a tough time. Why don't you use your drone to send them some fresh vegetables?" I agreed and piloted the drone to deliver freshly picked eggplants. It was a long while before the man at 603 opened his window, on which he had hung a note. The note bore unfortunate news. His wife had succumbed to her illness and passed away early yesterday morning. Instantly, the joy our family felt was overshadowed by this sad news. My father stared blankly at the vent window, cursing, "This damn virus, how long will it continue?" By the 7th month of the apocalypse, it began to snow outside, our safe house lacked heating, and the rain and snow seeped in through the vent, chilling us to the bone. The damp and cold winter of the South felt penetratingly magical, bringing about a sense of despair. Despite my mother pulling out all our thick quilts, they were not enough to fend off the cold. Relying on our stockpiled supplies, we managed to scrape by, but the man at 603 was in a dire situation. During the second week of the blizzard, he sent a message asking for help, saying he had caught a severe cold and might not survive the winter. He wrote the note as a farewell and to thank our family for our long-term care. Upon receiving his note, my parents were visibly distressed. Although we had never met face-to-face, the exchange of messages over time had made us consider him a friend. My mother suggested, "Lillian, don't we still have plenty of antibiotics? Send some to Finley, owner of 603, and maybe catch a fish for him to make soup. It's so cold, and he's hungry and severely ill. How can he cope?" I knew my mother had a tendency to be overly compassionate, but I agreed nonetheless. I couldn't stop her kindness. However, her good intentions eventually led to a security risk for us. After sending the medicines and food to Finley, the drone malfunctioned on its way back, crashing into an electric line and falling. My father and I were frantic. The drone was our crucial means of understanding the outside world, and we couldn't afford to lose it. Eventually, my father and I decided to take the risk and leave the safe house to retrieve the damaged drone to see if it could be repaired. Despite the high risks involved, we had no other choice. The winter wind was harsh as if slapping us brutally, and the road was covered with a thick layer of ice. My father and I cracked the door open just enough to ensure there were no zombies nearby before cautiously stepping out. I instructed my father to keep watch close to the safe house while I went to look for the drone, but he was reluctant to let me go alone. Reluctantly, Dad insisted on coming with me. Fortunately, the drone hadn't fallen far, and I quickly found it buried in the snow. I picked it up in a hurry and was about to check what went wrong when Dad suddenly pushed me and shouted, "Lillian, run." I turned back to see a horde of zombies emerging from the snow, rapidly heading towards us. The winter was cold, and our thick coats made it hard to move, but the zombies were unaffected, unable to run back to the main gate in time. The first zombie charged at us. I swung my baton forcefully, pushing back the zombies in front, while Dad came over to help. "You open the door, I'll hold them off," he said. "Got it," I replied, rushing to push the door open, but then I heard Dad scream. Turning around, I saw a zombie leap onto his back and bite down. Thankfully, the thick layers he'd wrapped himself in before leaving the house protected him. The bite only tore through the outer jacket without drawing blood. However, more zombies were closing in, about to surround us. "Dad," I yelled, about to rush to his aid when the door of the safe house swung open. Surprisingly, my usually timid mom charged out wielding a rolling pin, striking the zombie that had attacked Dad. "How dare you attack my husband? How dare you attack my son?" Her ferocity was like that of a bodyguard, quickly clearing the zombies around Dad. "Mom, why did you come out?" I was shocked by her bold actions. With the tide of undead not yet upon us, I quickly pulled them into the safe house. Stella, who had been hiding behind the door, promptly shut the iron door behind us. With a loud bang, the zombies were kept outside, through the iron door. I could even hear their nails scraping against the metal, sending chills down my spine. Mom, who had been so fierce just moments before, now knelt on the floor of the safe house, sobbing in terror. Dad and I rushed to comfort her, each of us hugging her tightly as she cried. "What would we do if something happened to you too?" Seeing Mom cry her heart out brought tears to my eyes. Perhaps this is what family is all about. Once emotions stabilized, I insisted Dad take off his coat to check for any bite wounds. Fortunately, it was a close call with no injuries. His only wound was a scrape from a fall. Just to be safe, I gave him an antibiotic shot and urged him to rest and conserve energy in case he fell ill. After enduring that long winter, spring finally arrived, signaling a time of renewal. Thankfully, our family survived. With a year's experience in planting, my parents expanded their gardening efforts. Our safe house was now filled with greenery and various fruits and vegetables. The man from Unit 603 had also survived the winter and continued to exchange information with us via the drone. I kept using the drone to monitor the situation outside. A year had passed since the virus outbreak, and only a few households remained within several kilometers. Those who had survived this long had ample experience in survival. After discussing with my family, I decided to use the drone to establish contact with these few remaining households. Subsequently, we formed an alliance and even collaborated to set traps to eliminate the zombies that frequently roamed near our residential area. Zombies aren't bothered by the cold, but they dread the harsh sunlight, which accelerates the decay of their bodies and slows their movements considerably. During the hottest days of summer, the households in our area would band together to scavenge for essential supplies. Although our family wasn't short on food, my father joined in these scavenging trips a few times to integrate with the larger community. Taking advantage of the scorching summer days, we emptied several nearby supermarkets. That day, my father even brought home a bag of rice and several packets of hot pot base, which delighted Stella immensely. In the evening, our family sat joyfully around the stove, savoring a long-missed hot pot meal. However, the risk of cooking with an open flame was still too high. After witnessing a tragic event, my mother decided never to use an open flame again. That night, while I was maintaining the safety shelter's filtration system, I suddenly heard screaming outside. I quickly observed the situation through the periscope and saw a disheveled woman running frantically to the door of a survivor's house, pounding on it violently. Soon after, a large group of zombies followed and viciously attacked the building. Eventually, the disheveled woman and the family inside were all killed by the zombies. At first, I didn't understand what had happened until I spoke with a man from Unit 603, who explained the situation. The incident occurred while the family was eating hot pot. The smell of the hot oil drifted outside, attracting a refugee who was fleeing from place to place. It was this refugee who led the zombies to them, and in a moment of indulgence, the whole family perished, a truly regrettable outcome. After that day, my mother organized a family meeting. We collected all items that could start a fire and established a rule that we would only light a fire once a week, specifically for making fish soup on Sundays. We had no objections. What did a slight drop in living standards matter compared to our lives? Our family lived cautiously, albeit humbly, yet in peace. Each day, Stella would make a mark on the wall with chalk, murmuring sadly to herself, "It's been so long. I wonder when it will be safe outside." At those moments, I would hug Stella's shoulders and cheer her up with a smile. "Don't worry, the country won't abandon us. As long as we stay united as a family and live a simple life together, we will eventually see better days." As the seasons changed and winter returned, more than 500 days had passed since the virus outbreak. Stella grew up, becoming very well behaved and knowledgeable. Not only did she take over all the household chores, but she also self-studied a great deal of medical knowledge, which eased our worries whenever someone had a minor ailment. My parents focused on cultivating the land beneath our safe house, planting lots of cabbages. When it was time to harvest the cabbages, my mother made an exception and used a bag of flour to prepare a simple meal of beef dumplings. Despite lacking dipping sauces, we enjoyed the meal immensely. Compared to the blood-covered, wandering infected zombies in the cold and snowy outdoors, our home felt like heaven. Although the threat of zombies still lingered, the smiles began to reappear on everyone's faces as they watched over their family. After the arrival of spring, our family recently celebrated a great joyous event. While Mom was cooking for everyone, she suddenly started vomiting out of nowhere. Stella and I were terrified, thinking Mom had fallen ill, until Stella noticed Mom's slightly bulging belly and her expression turned peculiar. Dad chuckled and said, "Staying in the safe house all day gets boring. Since we're not doing much anyway, we thought we might as well have some fun and give you guys a little brother or sister." Stella and I were speechless. Well, I figured it out. The only real newcomer was the one in Mom's belly. I had to admire their nerve, considering the timing. Adding a new member to the family should have been a happy occasion, but it undoubtedly added to our burdens. Later, the man from apartment 603 learned about it and sent over 2 eggs as a celebratory gesture. We were all happy to receive the eggs, but amidst the joy, I felt particularly puzzled. I quickly sent a message via drone, asking him where he got the eggs from. It had been nearly 2 years since the apocalypse began. It was impossible for anyone to keep poultry, and eggs weren't easy to preserve or have lasted from before the apocalypse. He told me that recently several helicopters had appeared over the city. Living high up, he was among the first to spot them and excitedly ran to the rooftop to call for help. The people in the helicopter then dropped some supplies, including the eggs. This news filled us with overwhelming joy. After waiting for 2 years, the National Rescue Team had finally arrived. Indeed, 3 days after receiving the eggs, many drones appeared in the sky above the city, randomly dropping supplies. I was at home picking tomatoes when I suddenly heard the sound of propellers and hurriedly used a periscope to look outside. The sight was incredibly thrilling. Besides the drones dropping supplies, I saw several military helicopters sweeping across the sky, and I could even hear them exchanging fire with zombies. Soon, a long-missed broadcast echoed through the city skies. "Dear citizens, please stay indoors and do not venture out. Our troops are currently eliminating the zombies, and it is very unsafe outside. Additionally, every day at 6 in the evening, we will concentrate on dropping supplies. After you hear the gunfire stop, please proceed immediately to the drop sites to collect supplies. Please do not rush and try to maintain order at the scene." The broadcast continued to circle over the city, followed by a stirring national anthem that was deafening and moved Stella and me to tears. Given past experiences, Mom was still cautious, holding Stella and me back, saying, "Don't go out yet, it might be those rogue groups causing trouble again." Dad also added, "Yes, we have enough supplies for now. Let's stay in the safe house for a while longer and see how things unfold outside." Both Mom and Dad are conservative by nature, which my sister and I understand. However, the gunfire and armed helicopters outside were real, indicating that our nation had not abandoned us. The rescue teams had crossed several cities to reach us. 2 days later, using the periscope again, I spotted some soldiers in camouflage. They conducted a large-scale clearing of zombies near residential areas and left behind some supplies and medicine, shouting through a megaphone, "Citizens, the zombies nearby have been cleared out, and it is now safe within a 2-kilometer radius. You can come out for some fresh air, but please don't wander off too far. There are still more zombies in the city center, and we will launch a full-scale attack on them tomorrow." After the soldiers left, Stella eagerly grabbed her mother's hand, exclaiming excitedly, "Mom, did you hear that? The zombies near our residence have been eliminated. We'll soon be able to leave the safe house, and the city will calm down before we know it." Her mother nodded, wiping away tears of joy. "Yes, the disaster is finally coming to an end. Soon, our family can live without fear." That evening, her father pulled out a pack of hot pot spices, and they lit a fire once more. The family gathered together, celebrating the joy of surviving the ordeal in lively spirits. The day after the soldiers departed, more intense gunfire could be heard from the city center. In the afternoon, a distinguished guest arrived at their home. It was the man from apartment 603. He brought with him a load of fresh groceries and rushed to the door of the safe house, knocking excitedly. "No need to hide anymore. It's safe now. I brought you something to eat." Since the outbreak, our family of 4 hadn't ventured out much and was unfamiliar with the outside world. We opened the door to let him in and asked for details. The man from 603 had been outside and had gathered quite a bit of insider information, which he shared in great detail. The situation was as I had expected. The sudden disaster had spread globally in a very short time, affecting not only our city but other provinces at the same time. Initially, the country was in a reactive mode, able to conduct only small-scale rescues before gradually expanding the effort and reclaiming the overrun areas bit by bit. The hardships of the journey go without saying. This unprecedented disaster caused tremendous losses to the nation, and the population was greatly reduced. Since our city is quite remote, it took the military 2 years to gradually fight their way here. Although it was tough, they made it, and victory will eventually be ours. It won't be long before the city regains its vitality. More rescue teams will be stationed here soon to help us rebuild our homes. Also, the government has developed a vaccine specifically for the zombie virus. People outside are lining up to get vaccinated. You should find a time to register too. Pregnant women like your sister-in-law can even apply for home vaccination. After seeing off the guests from 603, our family hugged each other once more, crying tears of relief. It was over. Everything was over. 2 days later, my father, sister, and I, supporting my pregnant mother, went to get vaccinated. Life had returned to the streets, with military vehicles occasionally passing by, and the city's loudspeakers broadcasting messages of hope. "Citizens, the darkness will pass, and we are on the brink of a new dawn. The city is safe, and we hope everyone will participate in the reconstruction efforts to rebuild our homes." Then, I was taken aback, but disaster only when about to lose it. Can one truly appreciate the beauty of home? All the hardships endured are worth it for this day. On July 19th, the last zombie in the city was completely eliminated. On September 3rd, the broadcast brought great news that all the peripheral cities in the south had been liberated. By November 6th, every survivor had been successfully vaccinated against the virus, and there was no longer any fear of infection. By that time, I had already donned the uniform of the rescue team, joining the efforts to rebuild after the disaster. The aftermath was a mess everywhere, but I firmly believe that as long as faith endures, humanity can find a new oasis. Story 2. I found myself in a post-apocalyptic novel where the female protagonist is my sister at the onset of the apocalypse. She developed healing powers, my boyfriend fell in love with her, the leaders of the base respected her, and the people relied on her during these end times. Out of jealousy, I continually sabotaged her, ultimately meeting my end at the hands of zombies. I was the malevolent supporting character, but I gave up trying to change my fate as the zombies approached. My boyfriend Ezra protected my sister and helped her into the car. A zombie's hand nearly grazed my head as I stood there stunned. Watching my boyfriend embrace another woman. Ezra, aren't you my boyfriend? Why aren't you protecting me? The tall, handsome man looked impatient as he responded, Esther has healing powers. If we get injured by zombies along the way, she can detoxify us. And you, he didn't finish his sentence, but his look of disdain said it all. At the garage door, my parents sat in the front seats while Ezra protected Esther in the back. Stop arguing, Faith. Get in the car. My father Finian called out to me anxiously. I stepped forward and got into the car. Zombies scratched at the car doors, but there weren't many in our villa area. However, after hiding in the villa for a long time, we ran out of food, and the water and electricity were cut off. 3 days ago, the radio announced the location of Sway City Base, not far from us. My parents decided to take us there. When the apocalypse struck, Ezra happened to be at my house. We watched as the world outside went from orderly to a living hell in just a month. During that month, communication was nearly completely down, and we could only receive news via the radio. The broadcast explained that zombies spread the virus by biting humans. If a wound comes into contact with zombie blood, there's a chance of turning into a zombie, but also a chance of developing powers. My sister Esther was bitten by a zombie early in the apocalypse and developed healing powers. She saved Ezra, who had gone out to clear zombies, and my father Finian. Since then, she became the most revered person in our household. In the novel, the female protagonist leverages her healing powers to become an indispensable aid to the male protagonist, Grayson, helping to expand the territory of Sway City Base until it becomes the largest base in the post-apocalyptic world. Now, the story in the novel is just beginning, and I am the inconsequential, malevolent supporting character. Esther's half-sister, Faith, after learning about the protagonist's healing powers, my boyfriend Ezra abandoned me to become her devoted follower. Like now, as we sat in a car together, the car drove along a suburban road, Ezra comforting a frightened Esther, whispering, "Don't be scared, Esther, I'll always protect you." He gently patted her back, holding her in a protective embrace as Esther closed her eyes and frowned. Not speaking, I scoffed internally, what a fool. As if the female lead would ever fancy someone like you. My stepmother Haley looked worriedly at Esther's pale face through the rearview mirror and pulled a candy from her pocket. Esther, here's a candy for you. Eat it quickly, she said, hastily putting it in Esther's hand as if afraid it would be snatched away. We hadn't eaten for 3 days, or to be precise, the other 4 people in the car hadn't eaten for 3 days. On the first day I arrived in this world, adhering to the notion that those with powers live and those without should turn into zombies sooner, I deliberately smeared zombie blood on my wound and eventually developed the ability of spatial manipulation. I not only had a vast space where time stood still but also the ability to teleport over short distances. So, at the beginning of the apocalypse, I went straight from my home to the nearby supermarket and filled my space with survival supplies. I wasn't foolish enough to tell the others at home about this bug-like superpower, because according to the book, they were the ones who threw me into a horde of zombies during an outing to buy themselves time to escape. A stepmother, a sister whose boyfriend's affections had changed, and a father who only listened to my stepmother. None of them came to save me, so this time, I was only concerned about my own life. While they were feeding Esther, I hid in my room, enjoying a self-heating hot pot and watching variety shows on my tablet. While they slept, I was gearing up, stepping out with a machete to exercise by slashing zombies. When they were disheveled, I used the stored water in my space to joyfully take a bath in my room. If they hadn't insisted on going to the base, I could have just stayed low in the villa, but going to the base had its advantages. In the future, there would be a massive wave of zombies, and without the protection of a base, it would be difficult for ordinary people to survive on their own. I kept recalling the content of the book in my mind, thinking about how to slack off once I got to the base. In the plot of the book, I was just a stepping stone for the romance between the male and female leads. Wherever there was trouble, I had to appear. This time, I didn't want to cause any trouble, I just wanted to survive. I was thinking about this when suddenly there was a sharp break in front. A handsome figure descended from the sky and landed in front of the car, his back facing us. He held a curved blade in his hand, stained with traces of blood. In front of him, the heads of several zombies instantly fell and rolled on the ground. This figure, he looked so familiar. Wasn't this my childhood friend Felix, too? The man stood and looked back at us with a gaze that was terrifyingly cold. He sheathed his curved blade, wiped the blood on it with the bodies, and walked towards a nearby car. The car in front slowly started. Isn't that the kid? Finian pointed at Felix shakily. Yes, that's him. He must also be heading to the Sway City base. He killed so many zombies in an instant. He's clearly not ordinary. Perhaps he has awakened some superpower. Let's quickly follow him. Having one more person with superpowers is more reassuring. Haley urged Finian to hurry and drive. A glint of shrewdness flashing in his small eyes, Finian immediately started the car and followed. Felix's family was my grandfather's neighbor and well-known wealthy merchants in our city. As a child, I often played at his house, calling him brother. He loved playing games, and I learned to play just to follow him around. My eyes lowered in contemplation. He seemed to be doing well now, with strong combat abilities, likely having awakened some kind of combat-related superpower. Since my mother passed away, Haley had brought her daughter, only a year younger than me, into our home, and it was Felix who helped me through those tough times. After I got together with Ezra, our contact diminished, and I didn't expect to encounter him here. As evening approached, Felix's car stopped next to an abandoned gas station. He got out, quickly killed a few zombies in work uniforms with a few slashes, and entered the small supermarket inside the gas station. We also got out of the car. The supermarket had clearly been ransacked, with shelves of food and drink completely emptied. Finian greeted Felix, and Felix moved a few shelves to block the damaged entrance. Without much more conversation, everyone found a corner to rest. Finian, having driven all day, spread some clothes on the ground and lay down to sleep, with Haley resting beside him. Ezra, with Esther, also found a spot to sit. He invited Esther to rest her head on his shoulder, but she refused. Her gaze instead turning towards Felix. Felix leaned against the back door. The location was excellent, providing a quick escape through the back door should any danger arise at the front. I looked around, settled next to him, and called out, "Felix." He responded with a low hum, and I noticed a sharp dagger had appeared in his hand, glinting silver as he twirled it. Playing with the dagger, he glanced over at Ezra and Esther and asked, "Split up?" "Pretty much." I lay down, resting my head on my arm. Felix had always disapproved of my relationship with Ezra, predicting I would regret it someday. It turned out he was right, and he must be feeling quite smug about it. "Are you feeling smug?" I blurted out unintentionally. He looked down at me, touched my head gently, and his dark eyes seemed to convey not smugness but rather sympathy. It made me feel unexpectedly tense. He tousled my short hair, which I had cut specifically for the apocalyptic times. "Hey, stop messing up my hair." I scrambled up from the ground, only to see him pull out a pack of compressed biscuits from his pocket, handing them to me along with the dagger. I was stunned, unsure whether to accept or refuse. In these end times, where everyone scrimped on food, it was already good enough if one could feed oneself, yet Felix was sharing his own food with me. "Take it." His tone left no room for refusal. I felt touched. Neither my real dad nor my ex-boyfriend had been this kind to me. Surprisingly, the first person to show me kindness was Felix. In such a public setting, I couldn't reveal that I had food, so I just took the supplies from his hand and thanked him. Ezra and Esther saw this exchange. Not to be outdone, Esther stood up, walked over to Felix, and took out some candy that Haley had given her earlier. "Brother Felix, thank you for protecting us today. Here, this is for you." She offered him the candy, adding, "By the way, I've awakened a healing ability. If there's any danger, I can help you." She smiled brightly, her gaze intent on Felix. "No need." It was nothing. Felix declined the candy and closed his eyes to rest. Embarrassed, she withdrew her hand and shot me a glare before returning to Ezra's side, glaring at me. Was it because she felt embarrassed about failing to win Felix's favor? In the story, the female protagonist highly valued strength and power. With the apocalypse reshuffling the world's order, only the strong could thrive. Her own abilities were supportive, hence she relied heavily on the strong for protection. This was also why she ended up with the male lead, Grayson, who led the Sway City base and whose fearsome fire abilities were well known. According to the plot in the book, Felix was a minor character. Following him to the gas station, I clung to Ezra, while Esther didn't interact with Felix at all. It seemed that my departure from the protagonist's group to join Felix had already altered the storyline. Watching Felix sleep, his thick lashes casting shadows under his eyes, his brow slightly furrowed, and a sickle clutched in his arms, a posture ready for battle at any moment. He was just a minor character in the book, but the way he fought the zombies earlier, there was no doubt he was formidable. I wondered what his abilities were. I pondered, touching my chin. Staying with the protagonist's group might mean being abandoned to the zombies one day. Felix and I shared some history. Should I side with him? I took a bite of the compressed biscuit Felix gave me. So hard, so dry. I chewed laboriously. Crunch. I finally managed to swallow the cookie, making such a loud noise that it was embarrassingly noticeable. Felix opened his eyes, silently took a bottle of mineral water from his bag for me, and then closed his eyes again. Tears welled up in my eyes as I gratefully accepted the water. It felt like a gift from heaven. With the water, I finished the blend. Tasteless compressed biscuits, somewhat missing the beef jerky back in my space. Just as I was reminiscing, Esther came over and asked, "Could I have a sip of water?" Her lips were pale and visibly dry to the point of peeling. I looked at Felix. He didn't say anything, seemingly leaving the decision to me. I handed the water to Esther, conserving my sips, still having more than half left. She eagerly took the bottle and gulped it down quickly, draining it much faster than I expected, which made me somewhat heartbroken to watch. After finishing the water, she seemed rejuvenated and said, "I'll pay you back at the base." I nodded, thinking to myself that I didn't really need that bit of water, but having the heroine owe me a favor wasn't a bad thing. The consequence of drinking so much water soon appeared. In the middle of the night, Esther hesitantly asked to go out to use the bathroom. She woke everyone up. It was too dangerous outside, but she was reluctant to relieve herself nearby. Eventually, we had to let Esther go out through the back door where Felix was. Not long after she went out, we heard a sharp scream. Finian, Haley, and Ezra immediately rushed out. Felix and I were a step behind. When we arrived, we saw about a dozen zombies on the street, who turned their heads towards us upon hearing the noise. Esther stood frozen, covering her mouth in fright. "Get in the car," Felix shouted immediately. Running towards the parked car at the front, the gas station had already been spotted by the zombies, and returning there would be trapping ourselves. Everyone ran towards the front door. I tightly gripped the dagger in my hand and followed behind Felix. Though my pace was not as fast as his, and the distance between us grew, Finian's car, which was closer to me, had its occupants following Felix's command, and they were ahead, getting into the car first. At this moment, the zombies were only 5 meters away from me, and I was just 3 steps away from Finian's car. I gritted my teeth, ready to sprint, but just saw the car door close right in front of me, and they drove away. I tried to call out to them, but a sweet, metallic taste filled my throat, leaving me unable to speak. My steps faltered, and Felix's anxious voice came from ahead. "Run." Yes, I needed to run. Felix's car was still ahead. I turned my head to see a zombie just a meter away, its rotting fingers nearly touching my shoulder, its bones barely visible beneath decaying flesh. I could already smell the foul odor emanating from it. Felix was reversing the car. With a bit more effort, I could make it. Heavy breathing filled my ears as I ran and turned to see a zombie with its mouth full of flesh. It opened its mouth wide, ready to bite. My mind went blank. In the next second, I found myself in the passenger seat of Felix's car. Thank heavens, I almost forgot I was a space manipulator. Looking back at the zombie that was about to bite me, it was still in the biting pose, probably puzzled about how such a large living person suddenly disappeared. Still shaken, I caught my breath. Seeing me teleport into the car, Felix paused his reversing. "Got some skills." He chuckled lightly and shifted gears to drive forward. The darkness and desolation were left behind, as if the destination we were continuously driving towards was dawn. In such a quiet night, it felt somewhat awkward not to speak. I touched my neck, which had nearly been bitten, and initiated a conversation. It was time for an honest talk with Felix. "Hey, did you just see that? Actually, I'm a spatial ability user." I didn't keep it hidden anymore. I directly took out 2 bottles of sports drink from my space. I was really tired from running just now. Felix was driving with one hand and took a half bottle of the drink that I handed to him. Then he said, "Your ability is quite practical." He then asked about the size of my space and the distance I could teleport. I answered all his questions and then asked him, "What's your ability? Is it speed or strength?" "Neither. It's controlling objects." "Sort of," he replied lightly. Then he raised his hand and moved his fingers. The drink bottles flew up to the glove compartment and screwed the caps on by themselves. It was almost like magic. In this post-apocalyptic world, abilities are varied. Some are simple, like the water type, which involves manipulating water, while others are more complex, like the mental type, which not only allows for psychic exploration but also hypnosis and more. However, simple abilities are not necessarily weak. The fire ability of the protagonist in the book is terrifyingly powerful. During a zombie tide, he can create a vast sea of fire in an instant, spreading for kilometers and keeping the zombies at bay. Felix's control ability isn't mentioned in the books, but with so many types of abilities, it's normal to come across unfamiliar ones. As we drove on, we could vaguely see the headlights of Finian's car in the distance. Felix's profile, set against the night, seemed more resolute, and the stars caught in his eyes twinkled softly, softening his deep features. He turned to me and asked, "Ezra and the others left you behind. Are you upset?" Even though I knew from the book that they would abandon me, experiencing it ahead of time still brought a mix of indescribable feelings. They were family, yet there was distance. It made me feel like no one had truly loved me from the beginning. I looked down, not saying a word, but he seemed to see through everything and reached out his hand to me in my dejection. "Hey, Faith. Do you want to hang out with me?" He tilted his head, his unruly bangs swaying in the wind, carrying the familiar air of youth. Just like when I used to follow him around, he'd lift his head from a game and casually call out to me, "Hey, little tagalong, want to be my sidekick?" My heart skipped a beat. After driving all night, We finally arrived at Sway City Base before noon the next day. The base had 2 gates. After our car entered the first gate, someone stopped us, asking us to get out and register our information. Finian got out of the car and came over as if he wanted to say something. Seeing him hesitant, Esther spoke apologetically on his behalf. Faith, it was a critical situation. We thought you could ride with Felix, so we didn't wait. I hope you don't mind. If it weren't for my ability, I would have been done for. I had already planned to break away from them. So I said bluntly, I'm not that magnanimous. Let's part ways here. From now on, you are a family without needing to worry about my well-being. We'll go our separate ways. Faith, Finian's expression darkened. We've already reached the base. Whatever happened before, what will the future be like? Now that your sister has supernatural abilities, our days will only get better. No need. From the moment you abandoned me, everything changed. I spoke coldly, my face displaying a calm and clarity I had never shown before. Finian clenched his fists tighter and tighter, while Haley rolled her eyes next to him and muttered sarcastically under her breath, "Good riddance to the ungrateful one, less of a burden now." Speaking into Finian's ear, she continued whispering, likely bad-mouthing me as usual. After hearing her out, Finian didn't try to persuade me anymore. Probably having reached an internal agreement, it didn't matter to me. By disengaging, I avoided getting involved in the melodramatic love affairs and the trivial family matters that always seemed to ensue. With Felix by my side, protected by his combat abilities, we could enjoy good food and drinks, hoard supplies in this post-apocalyptic world, and truly live it up. We followed the staff into a small room and filled out a form asking about our supernatural abilities, what type they were, and whether we had any supplies, among other details. Felix and I tacitly agreed to declare we had no abilities. In times like these, keeping a low profile was essential. When Esther revealed her healing abilities, it immediately drew a crowd. The staff respectfully escorted her to a solitary isolation room, while the rest of us were sent to an outdoor holding area. We had to stay there for half an hour to ensure we weren't infected before we could enter the base. Many others like us, ordinary people seeking refuge, filled the open space. Everyone looked worn and tired, their clothes ragged and dotted with bloodstains. Compared to them, Felix and I were in the best condition there. We were the only 2 in the car, taking turns eating self-heating rice and drinking beverages. Felix even used his abilities to vibrate water, heating up a cup of milk tea for me. True bliss felt like this, sitting in the car, drinking milk tea, letting my mind wander, not having to think about the apocalypse, as if everything was still peaceful. During the isolation, a man sitting in the corner suddenly started coughing up fresh blood, which quickly turned dark, pale, bluish spots spread across his skin. With a crack, his neck twisted in a grotesque angle, and he lunged at a young boy resting with his eyes closed nearby. After the initial screams, the unarmed crowd quickly fled in the opposite direction. The disturbance woke the boy, who couldn't help but scream as he saw the zombie's face magnified before him. With the zombie inches away, he shut his eyes tightly and futilely kicked back, but there was only a solid wall behind him, no place to hide, no way to escape. Seeing this, Felix's gaze hardened. He grabbed his curved knife, pushed off the ground with one foot, and rushed towards the boy. His blade moved swiftly, tracing a glaring arc across the back of the zombie's head. The zombie's head dropped instantly, neatly severed at the neck, blood spurting out. Its body still posed to bite, but it could no longer complete the action. Zombies are controlled by the virus in their brains. Decapitating them neutralizes the threat. After the fight, the staff arrived belatedly. An ability-using squad responsible for some of the base's security came. The leader, a thin, small man, relaxed visibly once the crisis was over. He ordered the disposal of the zombie's body, and seeing the neat cut, he looked at Felix, who still held the blood-stained knife, with deep respect. "I'm Garrett, captain of the Sway City Guard team, with wind abilities." "Felix," he approached me, signaling that our quarantine time had ended, and we could now enter the base. "Are you 2 together? A couple? Come on, let me show you around." Just as I was about to clarify that we were not a couple, Felix took my hand and gave it a squeeze, silencing me. As we followed him through the second gate of the base, he began to describe the Sway City base, nestled against the Longland mountain range, with its ancient walls stretching across the landscape. The mountains served as a natural barrier. In the base, one could rent housing, but it required trading goods. Without goods, one had to share a large dormitory room with others. Supernatural ability holders had private rooms but were required to participate in regularly organized extermination missions by the base, after which they would receive a share of the resources. Ordinary people could earn resources by contributing to the base construction, but these were scarce and barely enough to sustain a basic living. It goes without saying that those with supernatural abilities had a much better life in this post-apocalyptic world. While ordinary people could only manage to survive, he also shared some research findings on supernatural abilities, explaining that they could evolve. For instance, someone with a water ability might start by creating droplets and eventually advance to forming ponds or even rivers. Although no one had yet succeeded in reaching such a scale, I pondered whether my own ability to manipulate space could expand, allowing me to teleport over greater distances. Felix had some supplies in his vehicle, and we took half to rent a suite for a month. The suite was an unfurnished apartment with a living room, kitchen, and bedroom but no furniture. Garrett seemed eager to befriend us, hinting he'd include us in the next zombie extermination organized by the base. He probably thought we were strong, as it was incredible how efficiently an ordinary person could kill zombies. And it was odd to him that we exchanged half of our supplies for a month's stay in a large apartment. But I didn't care about his opinions. Dealing with zombies was Felix's job. I would handle the logistics. Living day by day was fine by me. If I were to die tomorrow, wouldn't all the supplies in my space be wasted? Before leaving, Garrett smiled and mentioned, "Our base is progressing in the research for a zombie virus vaccine. We might be close to eradicating the virus." We neither confirmed nor denied what Garrett had said. After seeing Garrett off, I looked around the apartment and pulled out all sorts of furniture from my space, such as sofas and beds. I also hung curtains around the front door to prevent people from peeping inside. When we initially fled, I deliberately delayed by 2 minutes to store everything from my home into my space, which is why I fell behind. Now the house had water but no electricity. I heard the water came from a mountain spring, available only for 2 hours daily. Today, we were lucky to arrive during the water supply time. I started to get the kitchen in order. I took out pots and pans and cooked some stir-fried pork and chicken soup, and sautéed some vegetables. I also cooked a lot of rice and boiled water, storing the excess in my space because I had found it inconvenient not to have hot food and water during our journey. After helping me finish in the kitchen, Felix went to take a shower. I sat on the sofa, trying to expand my space. After a long attempt, it remained unchanged. Maybe I should try teleporting. My accuracy with teleportation wasn't great. Sometimes, instead of the intended location, I would end up somewhere else, which is why I seldom use this ability. Sitting in the living room, I closed my eyes, thinking of teleporting back to my room. I focused my thoughts. But what? Why does it feel wet and warm? I opened my eyes to meet Felix's deep, shiny black eyes, his eyelashes still dotted with droplets of water, naked. With his well-defined chest muscles, my gaze inadvertently drifted downwards. What is this? Can someone tell me what this is? Floating bubbles and slippers covered the crucial parts like drifting clouds. This was his supernatural ability. Oh no, he's noticed. I suddenly looked up, hearing his voice tinged with embarrassed anger. Faith, Felix's face and ears were red, possibly from the heat. I quickly tried to use my power to escape this suffocating space, but at the crucial moment, my ability failed. Could it be that carrying things and practicing teleportation had drained my power too much? What do I do? In panic, I stamped my foot. Felix cleaned himself with his power and wrapped a towel around himself so quickly I barely saw anything. With his modesty preserved, he wasn't as furious as before. He leaned against the door, smirking. "Come on, leave the way you came in." The steam blurred my vision. His short hair, damp and hanging over his forehead, conveyed a rebellious charm. They say people look more attractive through mist. No wonder Felix looks so heart-stoppingly handsome right now. Just as I was about to say something, Felix suddenly let go of me. "All right, I was just messing with you. Go ahead, next time just knock on the door." "Hey, Felix." Before I could finish, I was pushed out of the bathroom. Damn it, he actually thinks of me this way, and I was actually dazzled by his beauty. I used to follow Felix around like a little puppy, largely because he was handsome, but in his eyes, I was always just a little sister. Then I met Ezra, who was considerate and gentle towards me, and soon after confessed his feelings, to which I agreed. Coming back to my senses, Felix had finished washing up. I moved a large bucket into place under the tap to collect water. Waiting for it to fill was boring. "Hey, troublemaker, want to go out for a walk?" he teased, cocking an eyebrow playfully. "You're the troublemaker," I yelled at him, then sulked. "It was an accident, not on purpose." All right, just kidding. But what? "I really don't mind if you want to look." His words were suggestive, and before I could ponder them, he stood up. "There are many places in the base we haven't visited yet. Let's get familiar with them. By the time we return, the water should be full." So what did he mean just now? Could it be he wants to cling to me, the rich lady? "Let's go," he said, grabbing me by the neck and pulling me out the door. The base was like a small society, with all necessary facilities: markets, clothing stores, weapon shops, mostly stocked by scavengers, trading goods in a primitive barter system. Not far away, a 4-story building was heavily patrolled, looking like Garrett's squad, probably all power users. On the first floor was a window marked blood drawing station. Power-using squads coming from outside would line up at the window to give blood. What are they doing? I'm not sure. We should ask Garrett about it later. Felix frowned as he looked at the building. All the windows were covered with thick curtains, making it impossible to see anything from the outside and adding to the building's mysterious allure. The next day, when we ran into Garrett, he was preparing for a cleansing operation in Peartown organized by the base. Scheduled for 3 days later, he invited us to join, and Felix accepted. We took the opportunity to ask him about the building. He explained that it was a research facility for the base. The research on the zombie virus vaccine was being conducted there. Since there were live zombies being studied inside, the base maintained very strict security around the building and the blood donation site. He smiled mysteriously. Because the superhumans have a natural antibody against the zombie virus in their blood, unlike ordinary people. Does that mean superhumans will never get infected? Of course not. The more powerful a superhuman's abilities, the stronger their resistance to the zombie virus. According to the research previously released by the Institute, our base's superhumans have to donate blood every half-month. The researchers can extract the zombie virus serum from this blood. If a colleague gets bitten, injecting the serum in time can save them. However, the base has not yet figured out how to mass-produce the serum, so we have to donate blood every half-month, but everyone is willing to do it, as the serum is exclusively for superhuman use and acts as a life-saving drug for us. Garrett was cheerful, filled with hope for the base in the future. He told us to be ready. We would drive out with the base's vehicles in 3 days. Many ordinary people, aiming to improve their lives, would also drive along during the base's coordinated actions to gather supplies to sell in the market. Over those 3 days, Felix and I made extensive preparations for the outing, sharpening knives, cooking, exercising. Felix even pushed me to practice my superhuman abilities. My teleportation accuracy had improved slightly over the past 3 days. I also observed Felix's abilities. He could control the movement of objects, even cutting and restoring them. Theoretically, a broken mirror can't be mended, but Felix's abilities could bring the shattered pieces infinitely close together until they were restored. What if my hand gets cut off? Could you reattach it? Suddenly curious, he seemed to ponder something as well. Falling into thought, I didn't know the full extent of his abilities, as I had never seen him use them at full strength. 3 days later, the base prepared a fleet of vans and SUVs, followed by various private cars and vans. As a large convoy set out from Sway City Base, Felix and I were slightly behind the main group. This time, the main goal is to replenish supplies for your space. Although we currently have enough, no one knows how long this apocalypse will last, and the longer it goes on, the less we'll find in the cities, Felix explained calmly as he drove. I checked our supplies in the space, mostly food and drink. Felix said we also needed to look for generators, solar panels, gasoline, and winter supplies. As these were our current weaknesses in terms of resources, it took 3 days to reach Peartown from Sway City Base. During a stop one evening, I met Esther. She was dressed in neat, tidy shorts, following a tall man. That must be Grayson, the male protagonist from the book. In the book, the female protagonist's healing abilities had saved the male protagonist's life multiple times during missions. Initially, he kept her close with the intention of using her, while she stayed with him for survival in the apocalypse. They used each other but were also attracted to one another, eventually coming together despite many challenges. The second-in-command at Sway City Base, Isla, who possessed electric superpowers and was a death row inmate in Sway City Prison, had awoken his abilities and established the initial base structure with other superhumans in the prison, ruling the early days of the base. Later, when Grayson arrived with his army and scientific resources, he took over from Isla as the leader of the base, with Isla stepping back. However, Isla still had his eyes on Grayson's position, coveting his role. Esther had always been secretly working hard to enhance her special abilities. After arriving at the base, the first person to receive her was Isla, who secretly harbored feelings for her. Driven by her pursuit of power and authority, Isla plotted to eliminate Grayson and take his place. However, in a sudden twist, Grayson's abilities significantly increased, allowing him to defeat the rebellious Isla, seize power, and win Esther's heart as well. This was a classic post-apocalyptic romance story. I stirred the fire in front of me, and both Grayson and Esther appeared. This time, without my malicious interference as the villainess, their romance should proceed more smoothly. When I saw Esther, she saw me too. She whispered a few words to the man beside her and then walked towards me. Faith, I nodded. I've settled our parents, and Ezra is working at the construction site of the base. I've made it clear that I'm not interested in him. If you still have feelings for him, you can find him at the base. For someone ordinary like you to join such an expedition is just to scavenge for more food, which is too dangerous when you get back to the base. You should rejoin Ezra, you can support each other, and the base will protect you. After speaking, she looked down at my expression. I found it laughable. I'm in charge of my own life. I don't need your domineering advice. I have nothing to do with any of you anymore. What happens to you doesn't concern me, and don't bother me. I repeated what I had said before, helplessly. So, you chose to leave the safe life of the base to venture out with Felix. She pointed at Felix, who had just returned with firewood, her tone suddenly rising. Felix placed the firewood beside the fire and sat down next to me. He silently added wood to the fire, and I sighed before responding. Esther, the base indeed provides refuge for many, but we have the right to choose whether to stay or leave. You may think that living comfortably within and being protected, working hard every day for mere survival is happiness, but I prefer to live a life full of excitement, even if it leads to a noble death. Fine. Before I could finish, a strong male voice came from behind. Esther looked at the newcomer and frowned. I turned around to see a handsome man, tall with spiky hair like a ruffled hedgehog, his rugged voice not matching his youthful appearance. Brother Yi. Hello, Brother Yi. As we walked, people continuously greeted him. It seemed this was Isla, the male secondary character. I had expected someone fierce and burly, but he looked unexpectedly youthful. This young man, once a condemned criminal, I wasn't deceived by his appearance. In this post-apocalyptic world, I trust only Felix. Isla approached Esther and handed her a can of beef, a rare delicacy even for the leadership at the base. Esther swallowed. Tempted by the beef, she reached up to take it, but another man intercepted her halfway. Esther, come here. The main character's voice was stern. Clad in military attire, his boots clacking on the ground, Esther withdrew her hand, and I watched the can of beef wistfully. Oh, how I craved a fresh beef hot pot. If only we could set up a hot pot by this fire. I rested my chin on my hands, the flickering flames reflected in my eyes, like little rose sacks of fortune. Want to eat? Felix looked around. Definitely, I replied. I was really craving hot pot, but with so many people around, the strong aroma would surely give us away. We were positioned on the outskirts of the group, which made it difficult to be spotted without deliberate attention, yet the smell of hot pot was something we couldn't hide. Felix pulled out a small pot from his bag, and I fetched some vegetables, meat, and the hot pot base from a space storage. We tucked the fatty beef and various meatballs into a corner, and just like that, we boldly started cooking hot pot right there. Are you sure we won't get caught? I whispered. Walk away a bit and see if you can still smell it. Felix turned his back to the crowd and began adding vegetables to the pot. I walked about 2 meters away, and sure enough, I couldn't smell the delicious aroma of the hot pot at all. How did you manage that? It's amazing. I used my power to keep the smell from spreading. Had Felix's abilities really become so strong that he could control something as subtle as gas? I swished a slice of fatty beef in the broth. It was fresh, fragrant, spicy, and utterly delicious. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The joy of being able to eat what I craved was truly blissful. Seeing me happy, Felix smiled too. His usual cold demeanor softened in the warmth of the moment. Behind us, the scattered campfires were solemn and quiet. Being with Felix, I felt a sense of home that had been missing for a long time. In these hard times, there's nothing that a hot pot meal can't fix. Waking up, life still held hope. The next morning, we arrived at Pear Blossom Town. The main road leading into the town was congested with private cars, all belonging to those who had failed to escape their predicaments. The dense traffic was not a good sign about the situation in Pear Blossom Town. Power users from our base were dispatched to clear a path wide enough for one vehicle, to ensure the road was passable. Only the base's vans carried us into Pear Blossom Town. There was a large warehouse-style supermarket on the outskirts of the town, which was our destination. It was 9 a.m., and we had to leave before sunset to avoid the unpredictable dangers of the night. Fortunately, with the power users clearing the road and dispatching wandering zombies, it only took 2 hours. We regrouped at noon and then boarded the truck. Inside the truck, Garrett, with his backpack, spotted us and squeezed next to Felix. Buddy, stick with me later. If there's danger, get behind me. He grinned and nudged Felix with his shoulder, acting familiar. Felix nodded, shielding me within his arms, his gaze fixed on the truck's rear door. Don't wander off later, stay close, he murmured seriously. Suddenly, the truck screeched to a halt. Through the windows next to the driver, we saw him speaking anxiously with Grayson, who then exited the vehicle. The truck shook as a wave of heat hit us. Grayson was using his powers. Danger was ahead. Garrett and some other power users disembarked quickly, leaving only a few ordinary people inside. Esther curled up in a corner with a red cross-marked first aid kit beside her. After a long while, the battle outside ceased. Everyone returned to the truck, Garrett and others carrying several injured people quickly aboard. Esther hurried to check on them. 2 had their arms bitten off by zombies, others had leg wounds. Esther pulled out some medicine from her bag and injected those with less severe injuries. The critically injured were treated with powers, their ashen faces soon regaining color. Their breathing stabilizing, we had just set off and already faced a horde of zombies, casting a solemn mood over everyone. Garrett wiped his sweat and briefed us on the situation. The zombies we just encountered were likely attracted by the road clearing. These zombies only know how to lunge and bite. It's just that there are too many of them. There are always gaps that we can't cover. And that's when zombies find an opening and someone gets hurt, from what you're saying. Are there zombies that do more than just lunge and bite? Felix sharply picked up on the loophole in Garrett's words and stared coldly at him, realizing that Garrett was withholding information from them. Garrett gave an awkward smile, leaned over, and whispered in Felix's ear, "In places where zombies gather like this, there might be some with higher abilities. We encountered one on a mission before. It was incredibly fast. But these types of zombies are rare. Only our team at the base has encountered one before, and the base doesn't allow us to spread the word to avoid panic. Even if we encounter such zombies this time, it will be much easier to deal with them since we have so many people. Don't worry, we won't be that unlucky," he chuckled, optimistic and confident, but I couldn't help but smile bitterly inside. Thinking, maybe we are just that unlucky, it then occurred to me that in the book, the romance between the main male and female protagonist steepens when they are on a mission in a small town, and the male protagonist is severely injured by a very powerful zombie, but the female protagonist saves his life. I unconsciously gripped Felix's hand tighter, forcing a calm chuckle. Felix felt my fear and pulled me into his arms. "If you're scared, we can get off now and go back to the base, okay?" Garrett chimed in with exaggerated tone. "It's not that scary, girl, you're already here, and there's surely a lot of supplies in this supermarket. Stock up more, and it'll make life easier later on. Besides, with all these brothers to protect you, what's there to fear?" Felix gave him a look that told him to shut up. I calmed down and thought there was some sense in staying. The book didn't describe the specifics, but in this mission, they managed to kill that powerful zombie. With all the dangers, having the main character's aura around, there shouldn't be much of a problem. Not going back." Felix nodded. "Don't worry, nothing will happen." I leaned against his chest, his scent clean and fresh. The steady and strong thump-thump of his heartbeat filled me with a sense of security. The vehicle started up again and stopped at the supermarket parking lot. The sound of the car attracted the zombies inside. Everyone grabbed their weapons. There was no avoiding another fight. We had to fight our way into the supermarket to get the supplies and leave, so everyone braced themselves. The superpowered members of the team rushed ahead, while ordinary people followed behind, fighting with weapons. Felix wielded a scimitar. I held a machete in my left hand and a dagger Felix gave me in my right. We stood at the back of the ordinary people's line, helping them block the trailing zombies. These zombies moved slowly. And for the superpowered, killing them was as easy as slicing through watermelon. Ordinary people could also kill them if they overcame their fear. Grayson led the charge to the front, closing the supermarket's main door to block the zombies inside and prevent them from coming out. Then he led the team straight to the back warehouse. The warehouse was close by, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Generally, not many people guard a warehouse, and we had passed the most dangerous part. Grayson stood at the front of the group and pulled up the warehouse's rolling shutter door from bottom to top. Disaster struck in an instant. A dark shadow shot out from the depths of the warehouse at such a speed that everyone was caught off guard. Only when it got close did everyone see it was a zombie, but unlike the others, it was incredibly fast. Grayson hadn't even had time to react when the zombie's claw slashed across him, and blood splattered everywhere. The shadow didn't linger for a fight. After a successful strike, it quickly retreated back into the shadows of the warehouse, making it hard to track its direction. The sound of heavy breathing quickly approached as a dense mass of shadows emerged from the dark recesses of the warehouse, carrying with them the stench of decay. Instantly, my scalp tingled, goosebumps rising on my arms and back as my body froze in place. Suddenly, someone yelled out, "Run!" It was as if people woke from a trance. Rushing towards the vehicles, as the battle raged and we retreated, Isla led a team to hold off the zombies emerging from the warehouse while a squad was tasked with protecting Grayson. Fortunately, the highly capable zombie did not reappear. Once back in the vehicle, the driver quickly drove away from the supermarket. In the car, Grayson lay in Esther's arms, his wound stretching from his left shoulder down to his right waist, a horrific gash that nearly tore his body apart. Thankfully, as a person with special abilities, his physical resilience was greater than that of an ordinary person, and he was still clinging to life. Esther's hands emitted a healing green light, gradually mending the dreadful wound. Sweat beaded faintly on her pale face. "Why are the zombies in this warehouse so formidable? We've never seen anything like this before." "Yeah, they're too fast. If we were prepared, we might have stood a chance. But with the boss in this condition..." Everyone's spirits were low. After finally making a trip out, they had encountered a highly capable zombie and now had to return empty-handed. Feeling somewhat disappointed and powerless against the zombies, Garrett timely shared a previous encounter, including a tale of defeating a similar zombie, which somewhat boosted morale. With Grayson severely injured, everyone looked to Isla, the second-in-command at the base, for the next course of action. "Isla, should we fight or not?" "Right. We're all listening to you. Isla moved his fingers, tips crackling with blue-purple electricity, his lips parted slightly. Fight. Esther escorted Grayson back to the base first, while we stationed ourselves at the town's entrance, planning to scout the warehouse again early the next morning. That night, I was sleeping soundly in the car when Felix suddenly woke me up. What's up? I asked groggily. Let's go. We're heading to the warehouse. No. I glanced at the moon outside the window, hanging high and making the night seem less dense. The night guards at the camp were stealthily dozing off, arms crossed, the surroundings eerily quiet. Felix used his ability to manipulate the sound waves around the vehicle, stealthily driving our car away right under everyone's noses. Why aren't we going with the main group? I wrapped my coat tighter around me, chilled by the night air. The zombie that had nearly killed Grayson with a single blow was formidable. Could the two of us handle it? How would we get supplies following them? He flashed a cunning smile, revealing a small triangular canine tooth. I had seen his calm, serious demeanor before, but this was the first time since the apocalypse began that I saw him being mischievous. Despite being just a man in his 20s, the apocalypse had worn him down. With just the two of us, how can we possibly take on the zombies in the warehouse? Don't underestimate yourself, Felix, he smiled confidently. Flooring the accelerator as we approached the parking lot near the warehouse, I cautiously got out of the car, closing the door gently. Felix, however, seemed to deliberately show off, slamming the car door with a loud bang that echoed through the silent night like a clap of thunder. All the zombies simultaneously turned their heads, growling in our direction. I froze, quickly using my ability to dive back into the car. Felix, fearless, casually waved his hand, and the zombies, as if suddenly losing their target, began to wander aimlessly again. Holy shit, Felix, what's going on? Guess, is this your ability? Correct. He walked over to the passenger side to pick me up, and we moved in and out of the warehouse as if it were uninhabited. Aren't you a telekinetic? Have you controlled all the zombies? That didn't seem right. If he had controlled them, they should be standing still. But these zombies seem to completely ignore us, because what I control is the zombie virus in their brains. He looked towards the gloomy warehouse and cleared up my confusion. Zombie virus? Wow, that's possible too. He took my hand and we stepped inside. Earlier you asked me if a severed hand could be reattached. And I realized that I've been limited by the idea of controlling objects I have the ability to control. So could I control microbes, wind, thoughts, even the zombie virus, everything? He paused, his gaze shifting towards the shadow behind the shelves. It was the formidable zombie from earlier, controlled by Felix. It hadn't noticed us and was gnawing on the corpse of another zombie on the ground. Felix's abilities are so powerful, I marveled internally. Could he control everything? Both tangible and intangible. Isn't that like cheating? That zombie injured Grayson and then hid in this warehouse during the day. I tried using my abilities to keep it from coming out to attack us, and it worked. I knew all my thoughts were correct. That's why I brought you here tonight. I wouldn't put you in danger. Thank you for trusting me and coming out with me. His eyes sparkled. He trusted me. So he shared about his abilities. We both understood how invincible this ability was in a post-apocalyptic world. He could have pretended to just have a simple telekinetic ability, but he didn't. Instead, he chose to trust me and tell me, I've always trusted you. You're the only person I trust in this apocalypse. I gripped his hand tightly. In my heart, no family member was as reliable as Felix. In the moment our eyes met, an unspoken understanding passed between us. As a zombie gnawed on another of its kind nearby, he kissed my forehead tenderly, and I silently responded, a testament to the trust and understanding between us. The door from the warehouse to the supermarket was pried open with wire. Many supplies were here, some already opened and consumed. When the apocalypse arrived, some of the supermarket's staff and customers must have fled here for refuge, only for mutants to turn this warehouse into hell, with no way in or out. The zombies could only cannibalize each other, eventually producing a highly capable zombie. I packed up some of the intact food and water along with the shelves into my space, leaving some supplies for tomorrow's base team. I also loaded camping generators and batteries from the supermarket into my space. I took a variety of necessary and unnecessary items. The supplies in my space would be enough for Felix and me for many years, before leaving. Felix chopped off one of the formidable zombie's legs. We returned to the base quietly, and lay down in the car, excitedly. I checked the supplies in my space, too thrilled to sleep. With Felix's amazing abilities and the supplies we gathered, we could survive well in the apocalypse without relying on a base. Felix hugged me close. Once we get back to the base, let's go live a secluded, idyllic life in a sparsely populated area and build a home just for us, okay? I leaned tightly against him and firmly said, okay. The next day, the base geared up fully armed to fight a major battle with the zombies in the warehouse, only to find that the dreaded zombie had one leg severed. I'm not sure if it was my imagination, but after seeing the zombie with a broken leg, Isla glanced meaningfully at Felix and me. The group easily killed it, and the warehouse supplies filled an entire carriage, leaving people to stand on the roof to make room for the goods. Returning fully loaded, we received a warm welcome at the base. Grayson looked a bit under the weather, possibly still recovering physically or perhaps unsettled by Isla's significantly enhanced prestige among the team of superpowered individuals during the operation. The day before Felix and I planned to leave, the base faced an onslaught of zombies. This time, Grayson, deviating from his usual demeanor, fiercely protected the base amidst a sea of flames, showing a marked improvement in his abilities compared to his last mission in Lihua Town. After the zombie wave had receded, Grayson was viewed as the stabilizing anchor of the base. With him around, everyone felt safe and sound. This zombie attack also convinced Felix and me to extend our stay at the base. During this period, Felix continually practiced his superpowers, ensuring he could protect me fully should our residents face a similar threat. Some superpowered individuals were sacrificed during the zombie wave, and their bodies were preserved by the base, which declared them heroes and planned to build a monument in their honor. However, Felix and I discovered during a walk that these bodies were secretly transported to the research facility. What were they planning to do with these bodies? 13. Ezra was missing. Since you're his ex-girlfriend, did you secretly whisk him away? If you bring him out, I promise to forgive him. A woman, acting like a shrew, confronted me, leaving me utterly perplexed. I haven't seen him since I arrived at the base, I replied honestly. Did he become a superpowered individual? Is that why he doesn't want me anymore? Thinks I'm holding him back? She rambled on, clearly distressed. You're saying Ezra is also a superpowered individual. He promised that things would get better for us once he became one. He promised me. Her hair disheveled, sidled and screamed at my doorstep, attracting a crowd of neighbors. I had no choice but to bring her inside. Sitting down, she cried and explained the situation. With an increasing number of ordinary people at the base and a decrease in superpowered individuals due to deaths and injuries, the research facility launched a program where ordinary people could sign up to receive an injection of a modified zombie virus, giving them a chance to become superpowered individuals. Life was tough for ordinary people at the base. This woman, Linling, was Ezra's new girlfriend. Unable to endure the daily drudgery, Ezra signed up for the superpowered program, and now a week had passed without his return. Reflecting on this, I said, the research facility hasn't specified what happens to those who don't become superpowered. If they're lucky, they remain ordinary, but if not, considering those who turned into zombies, I left my sentence unfinished. Linling broke down even more, struggling to catch her breath. Has the research ever been successful? She sobbed. Yes, the neighbor became a superpowered individual after going there. They don't have to share a big room with us anymore. They moved to a private room and are living a better life. That's why Ezra went. Did you ever consider the success rate? About 1 in 10, she said uncertainly. After understanding the situation, I escorted Linling back home, though finding Ezra wasn't my responsibility. Something about the whole affair seemed off. If becoming a superpowered individual was so feasible, why wasn't the base promoting it more broadly? Were those who failed the injection turning into zombies? Could this be more harmful than beneficial? I shared the situation with Felix, who told me not to worry and that he would find a chance to ask Garrett. It felt like a dense fog was before me, leaving me somewhat bewildered. The next evening, Isla came looking for Felix, and they spoke for a long time in the room. When Felix left, he had a serious look on his face. After he departed, Felix said, "Tonight, I'm going to check out the research institute. Wait for me at home. Once this is resolved, we'll leave the base." I nodded in agreement, but once he left, he never returned. The day after Felix disappeared, he, just like Ezra, vanished without a trace after entering the research institute. Desperate, I sought out Hea, who must have known the reason behind Felix's disappearance. He didn't make it out. Hea wasn't surprised to see me. Where did he go? What have you done to him? You shouldn't be asking me. You should be asking your dear sister, Esther. He lowered his voice and whispered in my ear. Grayson had Esther come to me for quite a few people. Guess what happened to them? They're all dead, turned into ability-enhancing drugs by Grayson. Why do you think he was so powerful during the zombie tide? It was all built on the blood of my brothers. His laughter had a hint of madness. That night in Pear Blossom Town, I saw you sneaking into the warehouse. It was him who chopped off the zombie's leg, right? He likes playing the hero, so destroying Grayson's hideout should have been easy for him, right? But it turns out Felix was no different. Eventually falling into Grayson's hands, he shook his head in disappointment, his eyes tinged with blood. Why did you have to involve him? What are they going to do to him? He had promised that he would provide a home for me after coming back, yet he broke that promise. Because he's kind, he said with a cruel smile. He wanted to save our whole squad, and the research institute, which concerns all the ability users. Do you think he could just ignore it? Look, he went there, didn't he? I pursed my lips, holding back my anger. Where is he now? Tell me, what? You want to go save him? He looked at me incredulously. I'd advise you to give up. It's like the foolish old man trying to move the mountain. Why don't you follow me instead? Esther's heart is with Grayson, and I'll use her sister to discuss them. Ha ha ha. This man was a monster. I turned and fled from Hayes' house, but from his words, I at least knew Felix must be in the research institute, under a moonlit and starry sky. I teleported past the guards and entered the research institute via a side staircase. I treaded lightly. The lights were off on the first and second floors. The stairway from the second to the third floor was barricaded with iron nets, but that didn't stop me. I teleported through the door, and the next second, I was face to face with a person in a thick protective suit. We both startled each other. His hand moved towards his waist, but I quickly stopped him from pressing the alarm button, signaling him to be quiet with a shush. However, he didn't listen and tried to shout for help. Before he could, I knocked him out with a slap, but it was too late. I had been discovered. Fortunately, this floor wasn't very large. With only 10 rooms, I immediately used my abilities, searching room by room, just needing to pass through walls. The task wasn't too difficult. In these rooms, some were filled with various reagents, some had large glass jars containing various zombies, men, women, and even children. Some rooms contained bubbling pools of blood. He was just another source for us. Grayson needed a powerful ability to withstand the zombie tide, and Felix's ability was a perfect match. Unfortunately, he's exhausted now, barely useful. I was furious, unable to accept their cold and calculated cruelty, using people like tools until they are drained of life, just for your so-called greater good. How are you any different from the monsters you fight? Esther just smirked, unfazed by my outrage. It's about survival, Faith. In this cruel world, it's either use or be used. We chose to be on the winning side. I glanced at Felix, his weak state fueling my resolve. I won't let you sacrifice him like this. There's still humanity left in this world, and I will fight for it. With those words, I prepared to make a desperate move, knowing that the chances of escaping with Felix were slim, but refusing to give up without a fight. He was the most powerful individual with special abilities that we had ever captured, no matter how many drugs we injected into him. His body would automatically expel them after a while, each expulsion making his abilities even stronger. Once he was powerful enough, we planned to refine him into a special ability potion and inject it into Grayson that would secure Grayson's position as the leader of the base, and I would become the first lady of the base. Understand, how could you be so cruel? It turns out that the protagonists in the book were so formidable because they enhanced themselves by refining others with special abilities. Those ordinary people downstairs, if they acquired special abilities, they would be refined. If they turned into zombies, they would be killed. Felix must have also fallen into their hands. I clenched my fists. This time, I was determined to escape and expose their crimes. Esther seemed to read my mind and scoffed coldly. Do you think you can escape? Just heard that you can teleport people to the gate, right? As long as you are within the research facility, you can't escape our grasp. Felix gasped weakly. Let her go, so she can go and spread lies. No one is leaving today. A few people in protective suits approached, holding green syringes. Felix whispered in my ear, my abilities are useless against them in their suits. You go. I can't. There was nothing in the room but a bed, no objects to manipulate. Making it hard for Felix to use his abilities, I looked out the window. Many guards were already stationed at the gate of the research facility. I gritted my teeth. I'll take you with me. Let's try. Okay. Felix gently touched my head, his eyes full of tender reluctance. I don't want you to risk it. I'll be fine. Go. He pushed me away and used his remaining abilities to knock the syringes from their hands. He was quickly captured, and those people turned to catch me, in desperation. I used my abilities, but I was not skilled enough with long-distance control. I fell at the gate of the base, surrounded by a group of special ability users. It was all over. Do you know they are refining people with special abilities? You all have abilities. The next one to die could be you. Do you still want to be accomplices? Esther's voice came from above. Faith, you think they are not beneficiaries? My heart suddenly chilled. Tonight, neither Felix nor I might make it out. Just as I felt utterly hopeless, a massive explosion suddenly came from upstairs. It was Felix's room. A mist of blood spread from the window. That was Felix. The mist of blood spread, bringing slaughter wherever it went. Each person who had just harmed us was silenced by the blood mist, their screams endless, like a grand drama. As the drama concluded, the blood mist swept up and flew towards me. Subconsciously, I knew it wouldn't harm me. It was Felix. I took out a large bucket previously used for water from my space, emptied it, and captured Felix inside, then stored him back in my space. I released any survivors in the building, left the rest to a big fire, and teleported away from the scene, back at the cabin. I packed everything into my space, drove Felix's large jeep, and left the Sway City base overnight. Upon leaving the base, I took the bucket out of my space. Felix was still in the bucket, a red mass. Occasionally, he would twitch slightly, letting me know he was still alive. Heading north, we reached a newly constructed villa area at the foot of the mountains on the outskirts of the city. This area, still surrounded by wilderness, was empty of residents for the time being. Felix and I settled here, choosing a house near the mountains that felt like home. I wasn't sure if Felix would always be like this, but I could sense his weakness. A month after we escaped from the base, Felix's hand began to grow back. 3 months later, he was growing faster. Once his head and mouth had formed, he finally began to speak. He asked me not to look at him and to leave him alone in a room with some clothes. I often spoke to him through the door. Half a year later, I caught a wild chicken in the mountains and planned to bring it home. Just as I opened the door, I saw a figure slowly standing up from the sofa. Felix, I rushed up and hugged him. Hey, my legs aren't fully grown yet. He chuckled and collapsed onto the sofa with me, planting a gentle kiss at the corner of my mouth. From then on, I had a true home, extra one. Felix, why did you turn into a mist of blood that night? I lay in Felix's arms, playing with his fingers. Suddenly, his fingers dissolved into a mist of blood in my hands. I exclaimed in shock and threw them aside. But in an instant, his hand was restored, leaving me astonished. He chuckled lightly. Do you remember what my ability is? Control. He nodded. If you consider a person as being made up of infinitely small particles, I can use that principle. There was no object around that I could use my ability on, so I used myself as a weapon. That must have hurt a lot. I imagined the pain he must have endured, forcibly dispersing himself into countless pieces. It's all in the past now. After that ordeal, I found my abilities have grown stronger. He kissed my forehead. Now I can instantly vaporize and restore any part of my body. As long as your ability remains, you're practically immortal. Felix raised an eyebrow, a slight pride in his smile. Suddenly, I thought, Felix is really incredible. It seemed like the heroes in the original book were nothing compared to him. Probably because they had absorbed Felix's abilities, now that Felix was still alive. And Esther and Grayson had died in that blood mist massacre. The biggest threat to Felix was gone, so I could relax even more. I smirked secretly, feeling like I had secured a powerful ally. After Felix fully recovered, we decided to leave our hideout and check on the situation back at Sway City Base. The protagonists of the original book were dead, but the world still moved on, heading towards an unknown future. Felix and I sneaked into the city without alarming anyone. The order of the base remained unchanged, but the leadership had shifted to Isla. Half a year ago, there was a massive explosion at the Research Institute. Grayson and some of his men died in that explosion, and the research results were destroyed. It was believed to be a great loss for human society, but the superhumans and ordinary people who escaped from the Institute revealed a major secret. The Institute had been extracting abilities from superhumans, spearheaded by the deceased Grayson. Public opinion was skeptical at first, but when Isla, then the second in command, ordered a cleanup of the Institute, revealing many ordinary people who had signed up for the superhuman program, some turned into zombies, others drained of blood, the public had to believe their claims. Using public pressure, Isla discredited Grayson's followers and eventually took control of the Sway City base. Isla's approach differed from Grayson's. He valued the superhumans and the youth within the base. As Felix and I walked through the base, if Grayson still had some official concern for his citizens, Isla had nothing but endless ambition. Initially, the base's market was bustling with elderly women setting up stalls with their children. Now, it's mainly occupied by individuals with special abilities and young people exchanging weapons. All food is controlled by the base and distributed daily based on headcount. Younger men join those with special abilities to hunt zombies, while the elderly, children, and women till the barren fields behind the base's hills, working daily to earn their food. As we passed the base's farmland, people in tattered clothes, darkened by the sun, were busy mowing, digging holes, and sowing seeds with hoes and sickles. Under the scorching sun, an elderly woman with a deeply wrinkled face bent her already stooped back. Her floral shirt was soaked with sweat. Nearby, a child not yet 3 years old squatted on the ridge, holding a handful of seeds. The grandmother would dig a hole, and the child would drop a few seeds in. Under the shade of a nearby tree, a shirtless overseer with a colorful tiger tattoo was fiddling with a dagger in his hands. This menacing figure was undoubtedly one of Isla's former prison mates. Suddenly, the elderly woman stumbled and fell in the field. Struggling to get up, the overseer put down his dagger, kicked the old woman with his foot, and seeing no response, he picked her up and carried her towards the nearby hills. The child clutched at the man's trouser leg, crying, "Put grandma down, put grandma down." The man ignored the pleas, kicking the child away and disregarding his cries. In the distant hills, women carrying water walked past. Here, there was no distinction between men, women, the elderly, or children, only the useful and the useless. Those who were useless died. Those who were useful lived. Felix and I secretly followed the man into the hills, where he casually threw the body into a large pit and walked away briskly. A gust of wind stirred the leaves. Standing by the pit, we saw layers of bodies at the bottom, some decomposed, others gasping for air like the grandmother, but clearly none would last much longer. We rescued those still breathing, gave them water and food, and advised them to hide in the mountains. "Can you save my grandson?" the grandmother pleaded, gripping my trousers, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Felix and I exchanged glances and agreed to help her. By the time we descended the mountain, the people who had been planting and watering were gone, seeds and farming tools were scattered everywhere, and from the direction of the city walls came a rumbling like an earthquake. Felix and I teleported to a corner to hide. Above the city walls, a cold wind blew across the desolate landscape. Hordes of zombies approached from afar, besieging the base relentlessly. This time, without the powerful Grayson, the base was in grave danger. Isla and his group of special ability users lined up on the walls, knocking down nearby zombies and using their powers to attack from a distance. Isla enveloped the land outside the city gates in a storm of thunderclouds. With lightning striking down from above, the zombie horde, insensible to pain, knew only to advance, but even those with special abilities have limits to their power. Some of the ability users were visibly tiring, the overwhelming numbers and morale of the zombie horde breaking their psychological defenses. "Abandon the city," someone suggested. "If we give up the walls, none of us will make it out," another countered. "There are mountains behind us, where else can we retreat?" "Hiding in the mountains might block some zombies, at least giving us a chance to live. We'll be bitten before we even reach the mountains." "Stop dreaming." With a fierce shout, Isla turned nearby zombies into charred corpses. He stopped, his bloodshot eyes gleaming cruelly as he coldly ordered, "Bring the old and the young, use them to block the zombie horde." Others followed me into the mountains. "This, boss, this." The subordinate's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? Would you rather stay and feed the zombies with them?" "No, I wouldn't dare." "Everyone, hold on for 5 more minutes. After 5 minutes, we'll abandon the city and head for the mountains." Isla rejoined the battle, and all the psychics roared in unison. Yes, but Felix and I knew that their escape was being bought with the lives of the weak. 5 minutes later, the ordinary people stood at the city gates, bound hand and foot with hemp rope, like lambs to the slaughter. The psychics retreated from the city walls, ignoring these ordinary people as they passed by and drove towards the distant mountains. Without their protection, the city walls would only hold for a moment. The ordinary people also felt the oppressive anger as zombies battered the gates. Thud, 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 like the countdown before execution. Children cried in their mothers' arms, and elderly people silently shed tears, waiting for the final judgment. An old woman's grandson stood alone at the very edge, by himself, and yet he did not cry, for he knew there was no one left to comfort him. I tightened my grip around Felix's waist. "I want to save them." "How do you plan to save them?" "I'm going down to move them one by one to the rooftop," and then, before I could finish, the city gates were smashed open by zombies. A dense swarm of zombies flooded in from the gates, like water bursting through a dam. "Help! Don't come here! I'll kill you!" The cries and shouts continued unceasingly. Just as I was about to muster the courage to jump down, Felix grabbed me. "Take another look down there." I instinctively covered my eyes. "Is it something terrifying?" "Don't scare me. It took me so long to gather this courage." "It's not scary." He pinched the back of my neck and lifted me down the stairs like picking up a chick. This situation seemed odd. How could Felix be so relaxed in such a tense environment? I opened my fingers slightly to peer out and immediately saw a zombie baring its large teeth, its lips rotten away. "Felix, save me." I clung to Felix's waist. He turned my head away, and as I looked, the zombie passed by me as if it hadn't noticed me. "Is it blind?" and its nose rotted away. "Did you forget that I can control the zombie virus, right?" I apologized for my ignorance. I touched my nose, seeing that the zombie horde also ignored those poor ordinary people. "Feeling like a post-apocalyptic savior is awesome," I chuckled. Felix looked at me affectionately, using his psychic abilities to clear a path through the zombie horde. I carried the old woman's grandson, leading everyone to safety inside the house. Felix and I then brought the elderly back from the mountains. The Sway City base was overrun and beyond saving. Felix looked into the distance, then suddenly turned to me and asked, "Do you want to build a utopia for the apocalypse?" "A utopia?" Felix and I scavenged the Sway City base, packing everything usable into the space. Thanks to Grayson's background, they had many weapons, which I took along with food, tools, and other supplies. Driving the only remaining bus and a truck from the base, we took everyone back to mine and Felix's home, that deserted villa complex. After settling everyone in, we opened up the land in the villa complex for farming, and everyone could keep what they harvested. I also set up generators and drew water from the mountain. By the time our utopia was established, another half year had passed. In that half year, the crops matured, and we maximized the use of the villa complex. Whenever zombies attacked, Felix was there to protect us. He is our steadfast anchor. Apart from Felix and me, everyone else here is an ordinary person, living peacefully and contentedly. Travelers who pass by see our tranquil and safe community and often decide to stay. Living a life free from worldly conflicts, our days are getting better and better. The children here can play carefree, everyone helps each other with warmth and hospitality, there is no war or strife, and everyone is treated as equals. I touch my belly, carrying a 5-month-old fetus. When she is born, she will know that although the apocalypse is terrifying, her parents have carved out a sanctuary for her in this chaotic world, where she can grow up as happily as before the apocalypse. She will understand that even though the apocalypse is scary, with effort, one can still lead a happy life.